Chapter 62. No. Hu Yan shook her head and dodged the jade pendant. She rested her chin on her hands and said bitterly, "Little Qing, do you think that when a woman marries into her husband's family, she really has to resign herself to her fate? Think about how lively the Yang family's seventh young miss used to be. She was also doted on by everyone in her family. But after marrying into the Wang family, she actually has to work as a maid and servant. She can't even do anything about it. It's really too hard." Knowing what little Qing was worried about, little Qing quickly shook her head and said, "That won't happen. If young miss gets married, won't master and lord stand up for you? No one will bully you." Hu Yan shook her head stubbornly. The Yang family's seventh young miss's identity is also not simple. Her father is Lord Yang Rong, who is not inferior to my grandfather at all. In fact, he is even stronger. But doesn't she still have to suffer? Sigh, little Qing, I suddenly don't want to get married. Hearing Hu Yan's words, Xiao Qing didn't know how to persuade her. She sat down with her hands on her cheeks and looked out the window. Women are destined to marry, and they have to give birth to children for those men. This is our fate. But life is also divided into good and bad. If you really marry someone like Wang Go, then wouldn't your life be ruined? Wouldn't it be better not to marry and be a young lady for the rest of your life? Hu Yan shook her head. This matter had a great impact on her heart. It actually gave birth to a kind of premarital phobia that modern people had. Seeing that Hu Yan was really disheartened, little Qing was afraid. If that was really the case, then master and lord would definitely punish her. What should she do then? Thinking of this, she was also a little terrified. But then, a person's name jumped into her mind. "Young miss, you can marry the Yang family's young master." You see, for his sister's matter, he did not hesitate to break the law and beat someone to seek justice. This kind of man should be trustworthy. Marry the Yang family's sixth young master? Is he really worth entrusting your life to? At this moment, Hu Yan began to seriously consider this question. Red Light Street. It was located in the outer city of the capital, near the Chongwen Gate. At night, this place was brightly lit, and countless high officials and wealthy merchants could be seen here. The Ming dynasty had rules that forbade civil and military officials from sleeping at night or going to prostitutes. Every official who slept in a brothel would be flogged 60 times. The matchmaker would be reduced by 1 level, which meant that he would have to be flogged 60 times. Even the person who introduced him would have to be flogged. The sons and grandsons of officials were also punished with 60 strokes of the plank. There was once a commander of Guangdong's Hainan Guard who came to the capital to stay there and prostitute. Shiju, Bangshi Weiyuan Guard. It meant that the people with military positions were not allowed to sleep, prostitute, or marry the musicians of the musical house. Otherwise, they would be transferred to other guard stations. However, even if it was a punishment, he would still receive his salary. There was a song about a woman who did not know the sorrow of her country's destruction. She sang the flowers of the backyard across the river. Du Mu's 2 lines of poetry nailed the singers, including the prostitutes, onto the pillar of shame, as if they were born cheap. However, this was just a theory of femme fatale. Who did Shang Nu sing for? Wasn't it all for the meat-eaters who shouldered the rise and fall of the country? If there wasn't anything they wanted to hear, would the singers be so bored as to sing to the water? Sing to the trees? Sing to the wind? To put it bluntly, these poor women were just scapegoats for the incapable and unprincipled men. In this regard, Yang Chendong's view was indeed different from other people's. In his view, existence was reasonable. Just like prostitutes, they had never stopped since ancient times. Just like when the Republic was first established, they disappeared under a serious blow, but didn't they reappear as soon as the economy developed? This was originally a demand. Since there was a demand, there should be a response. As long as it was used well, it could also reduce some crimes. Of course, it should be regulated, such as paying taxes, having regular physical examinations to ensure safety, and so on. Of course, with Yang Chendong's current status, it was impossible for him to bring up these things. That would be looking for trouble. The red light district was different from the ordinary willow alleys. The legal control here was much weaker. Most of the people here had skills, and most of them sold their skills instead of their bodies. Unless they really liked each other, it was another matter. Because of this, there was no need to be so afraid of officials appearing here. Tonight, Yang Chendong came here with the mentality of looking around, and at the same time, looking for talents. As the saying goes, every profession has its own master. What did this master refer to? Of course, it was talent. Just like those female celebrities in the future, there were good ones and clean ones, but what kind of state most of them were in, only they themselves knew. In fact, deep down, they didn't want to become that kind of person, but in the big picture, what could they do? If they weren't taken, there was no show to take. In this way, everyone else was popular like this, and the successors didn't matter. But it was undeniable that no matter how they became popular, they had a certain level of ability and could be considered talents. On the way here from the Yang family village, Yang Chendong had already heard from his fourth brother that there were two very famous courtesans in the red light district. They were famous for their skills and were the guests of many distinguished people. Most importantly, they really sold their skills instead of their bodies. To be able to persist in this kind of environment made Yang Chendong admire them very much. The first place he came today was called Jiu Yifang. As everyone knew, the ancients said that there were 6 arts: etiquette, music, archery, imperial, calligraphy, and mathematics. It was rumored that the courtesan, Lady Xiang, had 9 arts, especially dancing. Her figure had made many men forget to go home and forget to eat. Just like what his fourth brother said, Lady Xiang was born with a strange fragrance that made people intoxicated. Just by getting close to her, it could make people's thoughts run wild. It was indescribably beautiful. Regarding this, Yang Chendong believed. In the future, he would often hear people saying that a certain person had a body fragrance. This wasn't surprising. It was just that her sweat had a special smell that made people smell fragrant. Even though he had heard of it, he had been busy completing all kinds of missions back then and had never come into contact with such a woman. Now that he had the opportunity, he wanted to experience it. Yang was originally a profligate son. Naturally, he would come to places like Jiu Yifang often. However, because he didn't have a lot of money, he didn't feel satisfied every time he spent there. Thus, he didn't leave a deep impression on others. Now that his 6th brother was paying by his side, Yang's face was filled with excitement. Tonight it was time for him to show off. It was also time for him to spend lavishly. The carriage arrived at the entrance of Jiu Yifang. After the carriage stopped, Yang excitedly lifted the curtains and went out. Taking this opportunity, Yang Chendong noticed that the entrance of Jiu Yifang was close to 3 zhang wide. It showed how deep the foundation of this place was. At that time, how was a person's ability? It could be seen from the width of the entrance. This was the first impression that Yang Chendong had. After alighting from the carriage, Tiger's mane and Beta Persei were left behind. Yang San and Yang Si, who were driving the carriage, stayed behind to observe who was coming and going. With the help of his brothers, Yang Chendong, who was also wearing green clothes, walked into the main Jiu Yifang with a folding fan in his hand. As soon as they entered the gate, a manservant came to greet them and lead the way. After walking for another 20 steps, they arrived in front of a large courtyard that was 2 stories high. They hadn't even entered the courtyard yet. Before they even entered, they could already hear the chatter of orioles. Oh, isn't this Master Yang Si? A well-dressed woman in her 30s was welcoming guests at the door. When she saw Yang, she recognized his identity at a glance. She immediately pretended to be surprised and shouted. Then, a fragrance wafted into Yang's nose and she rushed over just like that. Ah! When Yang saw this scene, he first looked up to the sky and laughed. Then, he naturally allowed the woman to rush in front of him and hold his arm. Casually, he put 5 taels of silver into the woman's wrist. Then, he asked naturally, "Is Lady Xiang here?" Yang had never been so generous in the past when he gave out 5 taels of silver. As a result, the woman in charge of welcoming the guests had a happy expression on her face. She said in a coquettish voice, "Fourth Master Yang's luck is good. Tonight, Lady Xiang will play a song. I'm afraid it will start soon." "Is that so?" That's good. Just let someone lead the way. Yang Yang smiled and nodded. Then, he touched the woman's chin and laughed loudly as he entered the courtyard. At this time, another maid came forward with a lantern and led Yang Si and the others into the courtyard. As Yang Chendong walked, he said to Yang Chendong, who was following beside him, "That was the receptionist just now. She is a female artist who is no longer popular. In fact, when they were young, they had some fame. However, now that they are old, they can no longer dance, sing, or play. Moreover, they were born lowly and had nowhere else to go. Thus, they decided to do this kind of business. Speaking of which, they are quite pitiful. Because of this, when the guests have the ability to take care of them, they will usually be given some silver." As if he was afraid that his sixth brother would blame him for giving out 5 taels of silver, Yang Yang explained. "It's fine. Fourth brother can do as you see fit. The silver is not a problem." Yang Chendong smiled and shook his head. To him, 5 taels of silver was really nothing. If Gao Xiong and the others went out to rob, who knew how many 5 taels of silver would come into his account? Seeing Yang Chendong's indifferent expression, Yang Yang's heart was filled with confidence. He then said to the young girl who was leading the way, "This prince is not lacking in money. Find a good place, this is your reward." As he spoke, 2 taels of silver were handed over. "Thank you for the reward. This servant will lead you to the best place." Seeing how generous the reward was to her, the maidservant's face was filled with joy, and she became even more attentive as she led the way. The courtyard was brightly lit. Who knew how many candles and lanterns were lit? Just this alone would not be a small expense. Of course, the guests who could come here all had a small amount of money. They could casually give out enough to cover the expenses. Chapter 63. While he was still looking around, Yang Chendong was led to a square table. There were some fruits and tea placed on the table, and the location was close to the stage, where the performers were performing. Although it wasn't the closest, it was still not bad. Yang Yang naturally sat down there, and then his gaze began to wander. He accidentally saw a few familiar faces, and waved his hand to greet them. Seeing Yang Yang's obviously flaunting expression, Yang Chendong helplessly shook his head. "Fourth brother, what are you doing?" "Greeting acquaintances." "Sigh, sixth brother, you don't know, but I rarely get to sit in such a position. To be able to sit here, just the table fee is 20 silver taels." Yang Yang explained, and said with some heartache, "It seems to be worth it." Yang Chendong also looked around. Looking at the environment, he nodded with satisfaction. He began to compare it with his own renovation drawings, and whether there was anything that could be improved. Seeing that Yang Chendong didn't seem to feel any heartache, Yang Yang relaxed. Although he was his own brother, he was still spending other people's money. It was impossible to say that he didn't feel guilty at all. He felt that he was putting on a show. In order to show that he was here, and mainly to not feel guilty in front of sixth brother, he carefully pointed at the 2 tables closer to the stage and said, "Sixth brother, do you see the people at those 2 tables?" Yang Chendong's gaze moved. In his line of sight, there were 2 young people in their 20s sitting at the 2 tables. They were dressed in brocade and satin, and had arrogant expressions. It seemed that they didn't care about anything. Knowing that sixth brother was paying attention to them, he laughed and introduced them in a low voice. "The young master in the east who looks a bit older is Su Qingzong. The one in the west is Zhang De." Yang Chendong raised his eyebrows. "Are they the descendants of the Duke of Wei and Duke Ying?" Sixth brother is indeed knowledgeable. Su Qingzong was the eldest son of the current Duke of Wei, Su Qin. Now that his health wasn't too good, it was said that he would pass his title to this son. The one called Zhang De is only the second son of the Duke of Ying, Zhang Fu. I don't think he has a chance of inheriting the Duke's position. However, I heard that he has a good relationship with his eldest brother, Zhang Mao. I think he should be able to live a comfortable life. In order to please his sixth brother, or in order to have more money to spend, Yang Yang poured out as much as he knew. Yang Chendong nodded as he listened. He knew both of them, and the Security Bureau had done a detailed investigation before. Duke of Wei Su Qin, grandson of the Prince of Zhongshan Su De. At that time, Suda was known as the #1 contributor to the founding of the Great Ming Dynasty. The two girls bowed, and then the two girls holding the peepas slowly opened their cherry mouths and began to sing. Red dragonflies fly on the branches of the green poplar. When the spiders see him, they spread their webs, gazing at him with infatuation. Spiders, don't look at me. I advise you not to think too much about this trap. Even if you exhaust your mind, it's just that your webs won't catch up. The style of the song was very slow, and it often took half a day to sing a single line. It was very similar to the Kuan opera of his previous life. This was also a famous song with dragonflies at that time. Some people even nodded and shook their heads in appreciation, as if they were reciting the 4 books and 5 classics. But regardless of what others thought, Yang Chendong looked as if he was about to fall asleep. He was obviously used to the pop music of his previous life, and he really couldn't appreciate the song in front of him. The song lasted for nearly an hour. Under someone's praise, Yang Chendong, who was about to fall asleep, was awakened. When he raised his head, the two girls had already bowed and left. In their place was a beautiful woman in her 30s. From Yang Chendong's position, he could see a trace of melancholy in the corner of the woman's eyes. He guessed that it must be a kind of accumulation of life. It was impossible to say that she didn't have any grievances after spending so many years in the entertainment industry. On the contrary, all kinds of people had to be welcomed with a smile, and all kinds of people could make you unhappy. But since she was doing business, she could only welcome them with a smile. After a long time, this melancholy naturally merged with her soul. Fourth brother, this person is the head procuress here, Chuina. She was very beautiful when she was young, and even now, there are many people pursuing her. But all this time, she has been clean and has never had an affair with any man. Later on, she was chosen by the owner to manage this 9 arts hall. Speaking of which, she's not an easy woman. Yang, who was at the side, had a chance to show off, so how could he be polite? He envied his elder sister and younger sister in his heart. They could actually get a monthly salary of 1,000 taels from his 6th brother, but as his brother, he didn't get anything. This made him feel that it was unfair, and at the same time, he also had an idea. That was to curry favor with his 6th brother and get more money. At the very least, he had to get close to his elder sister and younger sister and get the money first. As for whether his 4th brother would be looked down upon by others if he tried to curry favor with his 6th brother, he didn't care. The world was big, but money was the biggest, wasn't it? Also, Cui Na has already come on stage, which means that Lady Xiang is about to come on stage. She came on stage to ask for a reward. This is also called asking for a reward. In a while, whoever gives more money may be favored by Lady Xiang. If the opportunity is good, it is also very possible to become a guest. Yang was still there chattering. At this time, there were already people throwing silver taels and copper coins on the stage. One thing to note here was that the Great Ming Dynasty didn't have banknotes, and even silver was very rare. The currency used by the Ming Dynasty was the precious banknote at the beginning of the Ming Dynasty. However, the precious banknote depreciated very quickly, so much so that it was like waste paper, and no one was willing to use it. Private transactions mainly used copper coins and silver, but before the inflow of silver from overseas in the late Ming Dynasty, the Ming Dynasty's silver stock was limited, and the imperial court prohibited the mining of silver, so the silver circulating in the market was not abundant. The time when the first banknote company appeared in China was about the first year of Daoguang in the Qin Dynasty, after 1820. This first banknote company was called Ri Shengchang, and it was from that time that banknotes appeared. Without banknotes, it also made it very inconvenient for people to trade when they went out. They often needed to bring a lot of silver or copper coins to trade. Just like now, people wanted to give a reward to attract the attention of Lady Xiang. For a time, silver taels filled the sky and flew onto the stage. Of course, only some small individual investors threw money on the stage. They gave too little, so they wanted to fish in troubled waters. They just wanted to prove that they were also generous people. Because they were embarrassed and had no money, they had this kind of method. For real rich people, there would be a pimp coming to the table with a plate to ask for money. Once he received the money, he would sing loudly to praise the noble status of the person who gave the money. Naturally, this kind of practice could also lead to a kind of competition mechanism, allowing more men to spend a lot of money here, so that they could have a better harvest. The pimp began to move, walking to the front of the table, and the silver taels on the copper plate began to gradually increase. Yang Hodong was watching this scene with interest. This was completely different from what he had imagined, so naturally, he was a little curious. While watching and imagining what kind of mechanism would be used when his restaurant opened, suddenly, he was awakened by a singing voice. "Thank you, young Master Wang, for the 50 taels of silver." Chapter 64. Following the voice, Yang Chendong turned his head and saw a seemingly elegant young man smiling as he placed 5 taels of silver on a copper plate. His gaze drifted around as if he was showing off his height, wealth, and handsomeness to others. "Sixth brother, only those who tip over 50 taels of silver will be praised and remembered by Lady Xiang. How much should we tip?" Noticing that Yang Chendong seemed to be moved, fourth brother Yang hurriedly added fuel to the fire. In any case, it was Yang Chendong's money. Even if he didn't tip Lady Xiang, he might not necessarily give it to him. Since that was the case, it was better to tip more. In that case, he would naturally be in the limelight. "Oh, is there such a saying?" Yang Chendong smiled when he heard this. Then he raised his index finger toward Tiger Mane, who was standing behind him. 100 taels? Sixth brother is bold. Yang thought that he understood. Looking at the gesture, he chuckled. Then, he sat down and waited for the turtle slave to come to his table so that he could show off. The turtle slave shouted and sang. Then, he handed the 10 taels of silver on the copper plate and some money from the other people to the little turtle slave behind him. Then, he walked to another table. However, it seemed that his good luck had run out. Or perhaps, most of the people who came today were embarrassed. In short, he didn't drink or sing. When he came to Yang Chendong's table, the turtle slave first lowered his head to show respect. Then, his gaze landed on the table of the 2 high dukes' descendants not far away. To be able to be a turtle slave who came to collect money, he had to have some status. Moreover, he had to have good eyesight. What kind of person could tip how much money, he could naturally tell at a glance. In his eyes, this wasn't Yang's first time here. This was the first time he had sat in such a good position. However, he was afraid that this was the extent of his ability. Perhaps there would be some money, but it definitely wouldn't be too much. Otherwise, he would have sat in the main seat where the 2 high dukes were sitting. Yang already knew the result, so he had been waiting for the arrival of the pimp so that he could perform well. When he saw that the other party didn't even look at him, he couldn't help but sneer. Then he imitated Yang Chendong and nodded to Tiger's Mane behind him and said, "Reward." Tiger's Mane wouldn't listen to Yang, even if it was his 4th young master. However, with Yang Chendong's previous order, when he heard the word reward, he obediently untied the bundle on his body, took out some silver and placed it on the copper plate. Compared to young Master Wang's reward just now, the silver coins this time were all 20 taels per ingot. Once he placed the coins in his storage ring, he received 5 ingots in the blink of an eye. Yang looked like he was waiting for the tortoise slave to sing and drink, but who would have thought that Tiger's Mane still had no intention of stopping? The silver ingot in his hand continued to smash down. 10 ingots, 20 ingots, 30 ingots, 40 ingots. Yang's expression changed greatly. This was far more than 100 taels of silver, but he still had no intention of stopping. This Tiger's Mane couldn't be stupid, right? What was he doing? He wanted to say something to stop him, but he was worried that he would lose face. He could only look at his 6th brother, Yang Chendong, but he still couldn't understand. Because his 6th brother's face was full of smiles, as if he didn't see the situation in front of him. He was still calm and unmoved. At this moment, the tortoise slave was also dumbfounded. He originally thought that the Yang family's 4th young master would at most tip 3 to 5 taels of silver, but who would have thought that the 4th young master would throw 20 taels of silver into the copper plate without even blinking an eye? The clanking sound of the silver ingot being thrown into the copper plate was incessant, to the point where he had to use both hands to support it, but he still couldn't support it. Fortunately, the little tortoise slave behind him had good eyesight and had already come to help. The two of them were barely able to support it with 4 hands. In the past, when someone tipped, the tortoise slave only felt happy and excited. According to the rules, he could also get a certain commission. In other words, the more he was tipped, the more he would get. Only today he felt the pressure. It was also the first time that he had the idea of quickly stopping the tipping because his hands really couldn't support it. Yang and the tortoise slave's expression had already changed. Not only that, but the faces of everyone in the hall who saw this scene changed. Even Cui Na, who was standing on the stage, had her face turned red. It was unknown whether it was fear, excitement, or excitement. This scene also shocked the others. After the 2 high dukes saw this, their expressions also changed. When they saw a large amount of silver appearing on the copper plate, they seriously looked at Yang Chendong and Yang Chendong, who was sitting beside him, with an indifferent expression. What kind of person was Yang? They often met him here, so they naturally knew. He was just the 4th young master of the Yang family. It was impossible for him to have such financial resources. Of course, it wasn't that they looked down on Yang, because even if he had so much money, he wouldn't take it all out. He still had to live. Not to mention, even if he took out so much silver, he might not be able to get Lady Xiang's favor. One had to know that with this amount of silver in hand, who knew how many concubines he could marry? There were other people who were also shocked when they saw this scene. There was envy, jealousy, and hatred in their eyes. Just like young Master Wang, who had just tipped 50 taels, his face was originally full of arrogance, but now even his head was lowered. He only tipped 50 taels and was already so complacent. Compared to the Yang family's tipping, wasn't he too ignorant and stupid? Regardless of what other people thought, Tiger's mane followed Yang Chendong's orders and took out silver ingots one by one. Finally, after taking out a total of 1,000 taels, he stopped and then closed the huge bag on his body. 1,000 taels of silver was equivalent to 100 caddies, but the bag didn't seem to have decreased by much. People couldn't help but wonder how much silver was left in the bag. At the same time, they couldn't help but admire Tiger's main strength. He didn't even bend over while carrying such a heavy bag. Looking at the 2 slaves who were already bent over by the weight of the 100 caddies of silver ingots, 2 more slaves came from afar to help. Only then did the leader find the time to sing. Yang Si has a reward, 1,000 taels of silver. As soon as the singing came out, the whole audience suddenly became quiet, but then it became noisy. Some of the friends who had greeted Yang before stood up from afar and cupped their fists to look at him. At this time, they were all proud to have made such a friend. Yang, who had stolen the limelight, naturally also stood up and cupped his fists to salute everyone. His big mouth almost reached the back of his ears, and there was no need to mention how happy he was. This was definitely the day he was proudest of in his life. At this moment, he felt as if he had reached the peak of his life, and his status seemed to have been raised by a lot. But what he didn't know was that those who were smart didn't even look at him, but at Yang Chendong, who was sitting at the side. There were even smarter people who had already guessed the identity of this person. The tortoise lowered its head so low that it almost reached its waist. Then, it bent its head and bowed. It wasn't that there were no people who had tipped 1,000 taels of silver in the past, but they could be counted with one hand. Moreover, the last time was a long time ago. At least, this was the first time he had been tipped as a slave. One could imagine how excited he was. When he thought of the commission he could get, he was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. Turtle's mane finally left and went to another table. But with Yang, an unpolished jade, in front of everyone, it was naturally difficult for other people's rewards to enter the eyes of others. Even if Su Qingzong and Zhang De each tipped 100 taels of silver, why did they feel that the slaves were so weak when they were singing? After the tipping session, the head of the house, the brothel keeper Cui Na, bowed again and then slowly retreated. She was replaced by a young girl wearing a red muslin dress, who walked on the stage with 4 maids with the same appearance. It was Miss Xiang. She didn't do anything, but as soon as she appeared, she immediately attracted the loud cheers of everyone in the hall. Yang Chendong looked up. She was wearing a rose-scented tight robe with sleeves and an emerald green skirt with scattered flowers. Her waist was tied into a big bow with golden silk soft smoke gauze. Her hair was hanging low and was inserted with a jasper phoenix hairpin. Her slender figure was seductive and charming. The first impression she gave to the sixth young master was that she was gorgeous. This kind of person was described by the phrase, gorgeous and indescribable. She was very similar to the young Hong Kong actress Wang Lin, who gave people a sense of seduction, eroticism, and temperament. When Yang Chendong looked at her, Miss Xiang also looked at him. At that moment, their eyes met. At this moment, the sixth young master felt that his heart seemed to beat a few more times. Sixth brother, she's looking at me. She's looking at me. This beautiful feeling was quickly disrupted by fourth brother Yang Chendong. He looked like a pig, and his saliva was about to flow out. He kept pulling Yang Chendong's sleeve and kept repeating it. Yang Chendong's thoughts instantly returned to normal. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. He already knew that Miss Xiang was powerful. She could easily seduce people's souls. Often, with just a look, she could make a man lose control of himself. As soon as Miss Xiang appeared, the scene suddenly became a little crazy. Everyone's eyes were like a rain of arrows, flying directly toward the stage. Miss Xiang seemed to be used to this. She still did her own thing. First, she bowed apologetically. Then, a wooden table and a guqin appeared in front of her. Her jade-white hands gently moved forward and landed on the strings of the guqin. Then, a soul-stirring sound of the guqin was heard. In an instant, the whole place quieted down. This was the strength of the courtesan queen. She could suppress the stage in an instant and play a role in suppressing the audience. Following which, her jade-like hands continued to stroke the guqin. Beautiful melodies echoed out and entered people's ears, causing them to feel relaxed and happy. Chapter 65. As her jade-like hands gently plucked the strings, her slender fingers quickly played on the strings. The sound of the zither was sharp and high-spirited, but not abrupt. It was like countless fierce horses galloping fiercely. Yang Chendong was also moved by this beautiful music. At this moment, the sound of the zither in his ears was both high and low. It was deep, gentle, and passionate. Just as the sixth young master was immersed in it, the sound of the zither suddenly changed and turned into a charming tenderness. Lady Xiang finally opened her mouth and slowly said, "Make an appointment with your lover, agree to finish the renovation of the peony platform and peony field when the flower blooms, wait for the flower to germinate and deliver it. It's almost the Qingming festival, and the head of the flower is not growing. Thinking of last year's flower, is about to bloom. Why is it so late this year?" This was a very famous song in the Ming Dynasty, Blooming Flowers. It talked about the love between a man and a woman, and it was even very explicit. As the spectators who were extremely familiar with these songs, they naturally heard everything and nodded their heads incessantly. However, in Yang Chendong's ears, it really made him feel uncomfortable. In addition to the different appreciation of the world, Yang Chendong still thought that such a song was misleading the children by letting a beauty like Lady Xiang sing it. It was like a great singer who sang bel canto. If you made him sing a children's song, how could it give people a good feeling? Yang Chendong naturally shook his head in displeasure. Even Yang, who was beside him, did not notice this scene. Perhaps he was immersed in the beautiful voice of his wife, but there was one person who saw it clearly. It was young Master Wang, who was not far from the table. Young Master Wang naturally had a name. Wang Si, also known as Yitzi, was an editor of the Hanlin Academy, a 7th grade official position. Of course, these were not important. He had a more important identity, which was the eldest grandson of Wang Ji, the minister of the Ministry of Personnel. His grandfather was the heavenly official of the Ministry of Personnel, so one could imagine how bright Wang Si's future would be. Just now, he had been humiliated by Yang. Although he was not a vengeful person, it would be great if he had a chance to get back at Yang. When he was listening to the music just now, he inadvertently glanced at Yang's table. After all, the limelight was taken away by this table. Coincidentally, he saw Yang Chendong shaking his head. He was very sure that this shaking of the head was not the same as the shaking of the head. It wasn't the kind of reaction where they would shake their heads in admiration. Instead, it was a reaction where they didn't understand, didn't agree, and didn't like it. This time, he thought he had found an opportunity. Ignoring Lady Xiang, who was still singing, he suddenly stood up from his seat, pointed to Yang Yang's table, and asked loudly, "Brother, why are you shaking your head? Do you dislike Lady Xiang's singing?" Originally, everyone was immersed in the beautiful music. Suddenly being interrupted, and such a loud voice at that, everyone woke up from their state of enjoyment. However, when they saw that the person who flew into a rage was Wang Xi, many people immediately stopped thinking about scolding him. Lady Xiang was immersed in singing and was suddenly interrupted, so she was displeased. However, when she saw that it was Wang Xi, she knew that she couldn't afford to offend him. However, since she was on the stage, she naturally had to stand up and give her greetings. Then, with a voice as pleasant as an oriole's, she said, "Young Master Wang, I'm really sorry. Lady Xiang, this has nothing to do with you. I'm talking about the person who was dissatisfied with the music. Hey, I'm talking about you. Since you have the guts to shake your head, why don't you have the courage to stand up?" Wang Xi interrupted Lady Xiang. If it were any other time, he would probably be very happy that this woman took the initiative to talk to him. However, he was angry now, and he was complaining about the injustice for the goddess in his heart. Naturally, he wouldn't answer more questions. The spearhead was pointed at Yang Chendong. From the moment Wang Xi shouted, Yang Chendong knew that he was referring to someone, and the person he was referring to was him. Originally, he shook his head because he wasn't used to the music of this era. In addition, he felt that with Lady Xiang's condition, singing such a song was really uncultured and beneath his status. However, he didn't expect that he would be discovered and pointed out on the spot. His fourth brother, Yang Yang, had already mentioned Wang Xi's identity. He was the eldest grandson of the Minister of Personnel, Wang Ji. With such an identity, it was natural for him to be full of confidence and arrogance. Of course, this was only in the eyes of others. In Yang Chendong's eyes, it was nothing more than a fleeting cloud. Not to mention Wang Xi, even if his biological grandfather, Wang Ji, was here, Yang Chendong would do what he should do. He would never let himself be wronged because of the other party's identity and let others criticize him. Therefore, after glancing at Wang Xi, he chuckled and said, "What's wrong? Could it be that there's a rule that the listener can only praise the song and can't have other opinions?" Wang Xi was speechless. How could there be a rule that required the listener to listen to the song? This was a pastime, and one could just follow one's mood. However, although there was no rule, the person performing on the stage was Lady Xiang. She was the person that Wang Xi had been thinking about day and night. If it wasn't for her background, he would have begged his grandfather to take her as a concubine. However, the top courtesan was also a lowly person. Based on this rule, she could never enter the Wang family. As the saying goes, the best is what you can't get. It was precisely because he couldn't get her that Wang Xi felt the benefits of Lady Xiang. If he had extra money, he would definitely come to support her. Yang Chendong really looked down on the goddess in his heart. Based on this, he couldn't take it lying down. Yes, there isn't any law that stipulates this, but everyone who comes here is here for Lady Xiang. Are you going to say that they aren't? If you're not, why are you here? Please leave now. As he spoke, Wang Xi pointed in the direction of the door with an indignant expression. Wang Xi lived up to his name. He was indeed very smart. Knowing that he couldn't use the law, he used Lady Xiang's name. For a moment, it aroused the anger of the crowd. Most people stood up and pointed angrily at Yang Chendong in order to curry favor with Lady Xiang. They said, "If you don't want to watch, get out now." Not far away, the descendants of the two Grand Dukes didn't join in the condemnation. Instead, they watched the scene with great interest. They had already guessed Yang Chendong's identity. It was very likely that he was the sixth young master of the Yang family who presented the great gift to the emperor today. Because of this, he was given the position of secondary grade 5 servant to the crown prince. With such a big gift and the previous incident with Yang Bao, They didn't think that he was a master that could be easily manipulated by others. However, the situation was not good now. They wanted to see how the sixth young master of the Yang family would break the situation. So many people suddenly pointed their spears at Yang Chendong. Tiger's mane and Beta Persei instinctively wanted to flash in front of the young master to protect him. However, the sixth young master waved his hand as if he didn't care. He noticed that Wang Xi only asked him to get out in anger and didn't even add the word scram. From this, it could be seen that this person was reasonable. At least, he wasn't the kind of idiot who would bring trouble to himself. To put it bluntly, it was nothing more than the fact that he had previously overshadowed Lady Xiang with his gift. In addition, he had shown a trace of disrespect to Lady Xiang, which led to the incident. This was just the thought of a young and frivolous person. If it were any other time, Yang Chendong would have just laughed and left the place after that. If he did this, perhaps others would say that he was weak. However, real weakness didn't depend on how others evaluated him. It depended on whether he had a strong heart. There was no doubt that Yang Chendong had a strong heart. However, he still wouldn't leave, not for any other reason but because it didn't fit in with his plan. From the moment he entered the 9 Arts workshop, Yang Chendong had been implementing his plan to recruit talents. This included the 1,000 taels of silver as a reward. It seemed like he was spending a lot of money, but in fact, he was just using this opportunity to leave a deep impression in Lady Xiang's heart. Then, he could use this opportunity to chat with her. He believed that with his understanding of music, it wouldn't be difficult to persuade her to join his force. Because he came with the intention of recruiting her, and Lady Xiang was a talent who met his standards, he couldn't just leave so casually. Losing face was a small matter, but ruining his plan was a big matter. "Are you young Master Wang?" Yang Chendong decided to fight back. At the same time, this was a good opportunity for him to perform. As long as there was an opportunity, he would grasp it tightly. Yes. Wang Xi saw that Yang Chendong wasn't displeased by his words at all. On the contrary, he treated him with respect, so the anger in his heart lessened. "I'm Yang Chendong. Greetings." The sixth young master chuckled and cupped his fists. After announcing his name, Yang Chendong waited to see the changes in everyone's expressions. Reality didn't disappoint him. As expected, many people's expressions changed drastically. Regardless of whether it was Yang Bao or today's auspicious item, potato, they were enough to make him famous. He wasn't a nobody. As the saying went, a person's name was like a tree's shadow. After his name was announced, many people's attitudes changed. After knowing that he was the founder of Yang Bao, the author of the books Condor Shooting and Xiao Li's Flying Dagger, and that he was a 5th-rank official, many people who thought they weren't strong enough quickly shut their mouths. This was the reality. When someone's strength was much stronger than yours, it was another matter whether you still wanted to find trouble with them. This could be said to be selfish, but it was also human nature. Besides, it was true that they were here to see Madame Shui, but they wouldn't offend a young 5th-grade official for such a trivial matter, let alone for such a woman. After his name was announced, many people suddenly shut their mouths and returned to their seats. They were completely different from the people who had been heckling just now. The books he wrote are even more wonderful, making people forget to eat and sleep after reading them. If he is so talented, he must have a good opinion on the path of music. Wang Xi is not talented, but I am willing to learn a thing or two. Wang Xi was unyielding, or rather, he wanted to use this opportunity to get back at young Master Wang. As long as Yang Chendong said that he did not understand the path of music, he would attack Yang Chendong for saying that he did not understand the path of music. If he were to say that he understood the way of music, then he would definitely have to perform a song on the spot. If that was the case, then wouldn't a dignified imperial scholar, a 5th-ranked official, have to sing some kind of romantic and elegant song? Wouldn't that be a laughingstock? All in all, this was a dead end where everything he said was wrong. There was no lack of smart people in the hall. After hearing Wang Xi's words, they looked at Yang Chendong with a gloating expression, waiting for him to fall into their trap and be humiliated. 4th brother Yang Yang was naturally a smart person. One had to know that being a dandy in the capital was not something that could be done with a little status. Most of the time, one had to use their brains. Seeing that someone was pointing at his sixth brother, he stood up agitatedly, wanting to refute the accusation. However, before he could say anything, Yang Chendong grabbed his arm, and then a huge force came, forcing him to sit back in his chair. Yang Chendong was still wondering where his sixth brother got this strength from when he heard Yang Chendong's voice. It seems that this young master knows a little about the path of music. But did he just admit it? Hearing this answer, everyone in the audience suddenly became excited. In their view, the best way for Yang Chendong to deal with this matter was to leave without saying anything. It was fine if he lost some face like that, but at the very least, it wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. But since he had admitted to it, how could Wang Si let him off? Sure enough, when he heard Yang Chendong say that he knew a little about the path of music, Wang Si was overjoyed, and he quickly said, "Oh? Then I wonder if sixth young master can sing a song so that we can see what kind of song can be considered a good song. What kind of song can make people shake their heads?" Wang Si spoke quickly, as if he was afraid that Yang Chendong would go back on his words. After he finished speaking, he bowed to Lady Xiang on the stage and said, "I'll have to trouble Lady Xiang to let go of the zither and give our sixth young master a chance to perform." This action was equivalent to putting Yang Chendong on a horse. At this moment, if the sixth young master backed out, he would only be seen as a braggart and would be looked down upon. But, "Sixth brother, you can't. I remember that there is an urgent matter at home. Let's go back first." Seeing all this, Yang finally realized that the matter had become serious. He quickly stood up and spoke in a voice that others could hear. "Haha." Suddenly, there was a burst of laughter. Obviously, everyone could see that Yang was looking for a way out and an excuse to leave. Yang's reaction is quite fast. Su Qingzong, the son of the Duke of Wei, who had been sitting at the table and watching the show, laughed with a trace of admiration in his eyes. In his heart, he also thought that this was the only way out for Yang Chendong. Not only Su Qingzong but almost half of the people thought so. Some of them even looked disappointed because the show was about to end and there was no more fun to be had. Just when everyone thought that Yang Chendong would definitely leave, he suddenly asked, "It's so late. Nothing will happen at home. If there is something, it will be something in your heart." He rejected it? Everyone heard Yang Chendong's voice clearly. Then, they looked at him with eyes full of surprise, curiosity, and even more excitement. Yang Chendong finally couldn't stand the provocation and entered the trap. If that was the case, wouldn't there be a good show to watch? They thought that after tonight, they would be able to boast to their friends that they saw a fifth-rank official of the imperial court singing a love song. That would definitely be a shocking thing. Sixth brother, Yang had already given him a way out and didn't hesitate to attract the ridicule of others. He never thought that his sixth brother would reject his kindness. For a moment, he was stunned and didn't know what to say. On the other hand, Yang Chendong patted his fourth brother's shoulder lightly to express his gratitude for his kindness. Then, he laughed and walked towards the spectator's stand. Yang Chendong's action quickly attracted the attention of everyone present. Some people were still in shock and hadn't recovered from their shock. What's going on? Is the sixth young master of the Yang clan really going up to sing a love song? If that's the case, then there's going to be a big joke. Although there was no rule saying that an official couldn't do that, such a thing was a disgrace to the educated. Presumably, after this matter, someone would impeach him in the imperial court. If something went wrong, it would create an eternal joke that he would be promoted today and dismissed tomorrow. At this time, even Su Qingzong and Zhang De, the descendants of the two marquises, couldn't help but stand up. They all felt the seriousness of the matter. If they were really impeached in the imperial court, as the people present, they would definitely be reprimanded because of this. Later, their father would probably ground them or something like that. On the stage, Lady Xiang had been standing there in shock and didn't know what to do. Of course, she knew what the imperial court's attitude towards them was. She also knew what serious consequences would there be once the sixth young master of the Yang clan, a fifth-rank official of the imperial court, sang on the stage in front of her. If the punishment was light, the 9 Arts workshop would be confiscated and people would be assigned to the musical house, officials, prostitutes. If the punishment was heavy, they would be assigned to the frontier and banished to the army. That would be a fate worse than death. Thinking of these terrible consequences, Lady Xiang naturally stepped forward and wanted to stop Yang Chendong. However, before she did so, the 6th young master showed a confident smile. "Lady Xiang, stand aside and listen to the new song I brought. What do you think?" It seemed that she was infected by Yang Chendong's smile, or perhaps she was forced by his momentum. In short, at this moment, Lady Xiang took several steps back and gave the stage to Yang Chendong, who was in a cyan robe. Standing on the stage, Yang Chendong found that he could see everyone in the field more clearly. Then he smiled. Then he said, "After listening to the song, Blooming Flowers, I felt that although it was artistic, it was still too sentimental. It couldn't be sung by everyone and was catchy." "What? Everyone can sing it? Catchy?" The people who heard it were shocked. "Are you kidding? Poor they. How could it be possible for her to sing so casually? Wouldn't that be degrading themselves?" Of course, no one would admit that the song at that time was too difficult and that not everyone could sing that tune. No one would admit that they were not capable enough. It seemed that he had known that everyone would be surprised. Yang Chendong laughed and said, "The song that young master is going to sing next also has some artistic conception, but more importantly, it is catchy. Unless the 5 notes are really incomplete, everyone can learn it after learning it once. Next, I'm going to embarrass myself. Beta Persei, give me the thing." Yang Chendong's shout startled everyone, but then a black shadow flew out of the air and fell steadily into Yang Chendong's hand. Then he took off the black cover that wrapped the thing. Suddenly, something that looked like a pipa but was not a pipa fell into everyone's sight. Yang Chendong carried it on his body. Chapter 67. It was a guitar, and it was also a modern product. It was something from Yang Chendong's dormitory, and it appeared here together with Detsung. As mentioned before, Yang Chendong would act as anyone in order to complete various tasks. He once learned vocal music to get in touch with his target. Now was the time for him to put on a good show. With the guitar in his hand, Yang Chendong's confidence overflowed. He originally brought this thing with him to discuss things with Lady Xiang. Yang Chendong knew that for talented people, especially people like Lady Xiang, money could only be the 3rd most important thing. Love and talent were the most important things for them. Love was something that Yang Chendong couldn't give them now. He didn't even have a wife. If he married a slut first, he didn't know how others would criticize him. At that time, it was really a matter of public criticism. Since that was the case, he could only give them talent. He believed that the beauty of music was universal. Just like the people in the future, there were people who liked Beijing opera and Kunku opera. He did not believe that the songs of the future would not work in this era. The popular and catchy feeling would be unforgettable once they came into contact with it. For example, the few military songs that he taught were already proof. Even if the military songs could be accepted by the people of the current era, he also asked Xiaoyu. She said that the military songs were really good. The beautiful melody was not something that those people of the current era could sing. It was Xiaoyu's words that gave Yang Chendong confidence. That was why he dared to stand on this stage and perform. However, even though he was confident in his heart, Yang Chendong still did not want to use something too advanced to stimulate others in the beginning. For example, if he used Jay Chou's nunchaku, the speed of the singing would probably be too fast. With a hum and haha, people would be confused. If they could not hear it clearly, how could they learn it? Therefore, he had to first use something that was more popular and more accepted in this era. Although it was as distant, at least they could understand the meaning of the words. Today, not only was Yang Chendong going to sing, but he was also going to teach. The people present were his first batch of listeners and students. Now that he had decided to sing, everyone in the hall held their breaths. They wanted to see what the 6th young master, who was known as multi-talented, was going to sing. Just as everyone was building up their emotions, Yang Chendong suddenly put his guitar behind his back and said with a smile, "Since everyone is giving me face, today, This young master will follow the rules and do something exciting. How about it? Although the question was asked, there was no reply for a long time because no one knew what he was going to do. Only Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei reacted quickly and answered loudly, "Okay." The two of them were used to the sixth young master being outstanding. In their eyes, as long as the sixth young master wanted to do something, there was nothing he could not do, and nothing he could not do well. Singing was naturally the same. For example, weren't those military songs from the sixth young master's mouth? Now that they all knew how to sing, everyone said that it was good. Seeing that there were only two people supporting him, Yang Chendong did not care. Instead, his body first relaxed, then tensed up. He immediately took out his singing skills, and then a loud and clear voice came out from his mouth. That day, Grandpa took me to see Beijing Opera. I saw a lot of big faces on the stage. Red, white, yellow, green, blue, grinning and staring. They sang and shouted at the same time. Wow, 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 wow. It was like thunder chattering in my ears. His opening speech had shocked everyone. That clear voice, without any hesitation, knocked on their hearts like a hammer, making them feel carefree for no reason. The blue-faced Dou Dun stole the horse, the red-faced Guan Gong fought Changsha, the yellow-faced Yen Wei, the white-faced Chow Chow, the black-faced Zhang Fei, called Cha-Cha. Suddenly, the climax began, which was the easiest part for people to learn to sing. As soon as the lyrics came out, many people became serious and even excited. At this moment, Su Qingzong and Zhang De opened their mouths wide. Wang Si, who was looking for fault, also opened his mouth wide, showing an expression of disbelief. The whole hall was also very quiet, and only Yang Chendong's loud voice was still surging out. To be honest, the Peking opera's face is really good, but the singer is singing in a dialect. I can't understand it no matter how hard I listen to it. The third part was said casually, but it seemed to be referring to something. The rhythm of Lady Xiang's singing was too slow, and even people who heard it for the first time couldn't understand it. As soon as the words came out, it was obvious that Lady Xiang, who was standing aside and didn't know what to do, hurriedly lowered her head. It was not because she was afraid, but because she was shy. Then came the climax. The purple heavenly king holds the pagoda, the green devil fights the yaksha, the golden monkey king, the silver demon, the gray elf, ha. In order to let people in the hall understand the meaning, Yang Chendong tirelessly sang it 5 times in a row. He didn't stop until he felt that his throat was a little dry. Fortunately, on the third time, at the climax, there were already people singing along. After all, as Yang Chendong said, the lyrics and melody were simple, easy to understand, and easy to sing. By the 4th time, more and more people began to sing along. By the 5th time, more than half of the people could already sing along with the song. Just when everyone was used to the melody and wanted to continue singing until the end, Yang Chendong suddenly stopped. He couldn't sing Rap Mask too softly. He really felt that his mouth was dry. Fortunately, there was someone who understood him. Tiger's Mane had already prepared tea and was waiting by the side. When he saw the 6th young master stop, he quickly handed him the tea. After Yang Chendong drank it up, he turned around and walked back to the stage. At this time, too many people were still immersed in Rap Mask. It was the first time they heard such a simple and high-spirited song, and they felt that it seemed to be something prepared for their men. For something like this, what's the harm in singing it in front of others? What's the harm? Just when everyone was still immersed in this passionate Rap Mask, a very light voice suddenly sounded. After everyone was stunned, they looked at the stage and saw Yang Chendong gently moving the guitar while speaking softly. A long time ago, there was a firearms camp. Song Lao San and his family lived next to them. They had nothing to do and even smoked big cigarettes. Big cigarettes existed in the 6th dynasty's era and were used as a tribute in the Tang dynasty. There were already many people who smoked in the country in the late Ming dynasty. The old couple had no children, so they gave their daughter a pet name, Dalian. When Dalian grew to the age of 16 or 17, she was really slim and graceful. The matchmakers kicked the door down, but Song Lao San and his wife only ate, drank, and played all day long. They didn't care about their daughter's marriage. Later, they met a young farmer, Tong Xiaolu, and the two of them fell in love secretly. Once, Tong Xiaolu came to Dalian's house. The two of them were secretly having a rendezvous and were discovered by their parents. This time, they got into big trouble. It was an insult to their ancestors and a disgrace to their family. Dalian's father used a leather whip to beat Dalian until her skin and flesh were torn open. He gave her a kitchen knife, a rope, and a pair of scissors and told her to kill herself. In the end, Dalian was forced to jump into the Qingshui River at the entrance. When Tong Xiaolu heard that Dalian had jumped into the river and died, he brought the joss paper to the Qingshui River. On a windy and rainy night, he came to pay respects to his sister Dalian. After paying his respects, poor Tong Xiaolu also jumped into the river. This was a tragic love story where both sides died for each other. First, he narrated the story in a narrative way. Then, the sound of the guitar accelerated, accompanied by Yang Chendong's clear voice. The tip of the peach leaf is sharp, and the willow leaves fill the sky. Dear Lord Ming, listen to me carefully. This matter happened at Shijing's Blue Indigo Factory. In the Blue Indigo Factory's firearms camp, there is a Song Lao San. Speaking of this Song Lao San, the couple smoked a lot and never had a son to give birth to a daughter, Chanwan. Amidst the soft singing, the story was slowly spat out. The content was clear and the melody was easy to understand. It allowed people to quickly immerse themselves in it. The people in the audience who were originally agitated by the rap mask began to calm down. Then they were brought into the story and could not extricate themselves. In particular, Miss Xiang, who was standing at the side, was already in tears. It was obvious that she had judged others by herself and thought of herself. In some ways, how could they not be the same? There were many things that were beyond their control, especially when it came to love. How could they have more choices? Yang Chendong's voice continued. He still wanted everyone to understand. After the first time, he only paused for a moment before singing the second time. Then, on the third time, Miss Xiang had already adjusted her emotions. She held the guqin and began to cooperate with Yang Chendong. It had to be said that the top courtesan was indeed the top courtesan. In terms of understanding and acceptance of music, she was indeed much faster than Yang Chendong. At least if it were him, it would be very difficult for him to completely understand the melody after listening to it twice. Miss Yang did it. Not only that, but because the lyrics were easy to understand, she even began to sing along. At the backstage, the head courtesan, Cui Na, was quickly writing down the lyrics with a brush. She had a feeling that this song, Exploring the Qingshui River, would become very popular. If the Nine Arts Workshop could be the first to sing it, it would definitely be very popular. At that time, customers would come in droves and their business would be several times better. They would even be able to get more money when they tipped people. Of course, this was based on the sixth young master's authorization. This time he sang it 4 times. When he saw that Miss Xiang was almost done, Yang Chendong laughed and stopped playing the guqin. He stood up and looked at Wang Si, who still looked like he wanted to continue. Young Master Wang, what do you think of my song? Chapter 68. All right. Wang Si was a straightforward person. He stood up immediately. Not only did he say good, but he also sighed and said apologetically, Wang Si underestimated the sixth young master previously. I sincerely apologize to you. I hope the sixth young master won't take it to heart. What's there to take it to heart? Speaking of which, you also contributed. If you hadn't provoked me like this, I'm afraid this young master wouldn't have dared to come up on stage and embarrass myself. Yang Chendong laughed without the slightest hint of blame. Wang Si was also a clever person. He smiled and said, Then we won't have the good fortune to enjoy such beautiful music, right? Ha! Immediately, the two of them smiled at each other and the enmity between them disappeared. The others immediately applauded. Affected by the atmosphere, Duke Wei's son, Su Qingzong, also stood up. He was obviously older than Yang Chendong, but he still cupped his fists and said, Sixth young master, Su Qingzong rarely admires people. You are one of them. Greetings. Greetings, eldest young Master Su. Yang Chendong didn't expect Su Qingzong to stand up at this time. This was the descendant of Duke Wei and would be the next Duke Wei. He didn't dare to slight him and cupped his fists to return the greeting. On the other side, Duke Ing Zhangfu's second son, Zhang De, also stood up and cupped his fists. Sixth young master, your performance and music are indeed easy to understand and catchy. Zhang De intends to make friends with you. But I wonder if there are any other songs for people to enjoy? When Zhang De said this, everyone's eyes fell on Yang Chendong. Even Lady Xiang's face was full of anticipation. Haven't you enjoyed enough? Yang Chendong laughed heartily. He thought that he had to strike while the iron was hot. While these people were still able to accept the new music, he should release some more. Immediately, he nodded heavily. All right, since that's the case, second young Master Zhang also said that we should make friends. Since that's the case, I'll give everyone a song called Friends. With a smile, Yang Chendong picked up the guitar on his body and began to play it gently. All these years, I've been alone. The wind has passed, the rain has gone, I've cried, I've made mistakes, but I still remember what I've persevered for. Only when I've truly loved someone will I understand that I'll be lonely, I'll look back, I'll have dreams, I'll have you in my heart. A seemingly peaceful piece of music poured out the bits and pieces of a person's growth process. Then, the voice suddenly rose, and the eyes looked at Zhang De, Su Qingzong, Wang Si, Yang Yang, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and everyone else in the field, singing, "Friends walk together for life, those days will no longer exist." One sentence, a lifetime of love, a glass of wine, friends have never been lonely. Once I call you a friend, you will understand. Every time Yang Chendong's eyes landed on someone, that person could not help but straighten his body. He was excited to receive the sixth young master's gaze. This was one of the songs that made Zhou Huajian famous. Once this song was played, it was naturally unrivaled. After only 2 performances, more and more people below the stage responded. Many of them even had tears in their eyes, as if they had experienced the meaning of being friends again from this song. As soon as the 3 new songs of Rap Mask, Exploring Qingshui River, and Friend came out, everyone looked at Chu Fifan with more admiration in their eyes. No one knew who took the lead to shout, "Dong Shui! East Marshal! One more song! East Marshal! East Marshal!" It was as loud as thunder. The loud voice spread out from the 9 Arts Square, causing the passers-by to stop and look at each other. They could not understand what was going on here today. After the shouting, Yang Chendong kept his guitar and walked down the stage with a big smile. He returned to his table. His 4th brother, Yang Yang, who had been sitting there all this while, was already blushing. When he saw Chendong sitting down, he said, "Sixth brother, you're really something. Once tonight's matter is spread out, your name will be known throughout the entire capital tomorrow." Yang Chendong smiled and shook his head. This was only the beginning. He had only brought out a small portion of the things that he knew, and it had already caused a commotion in the capital. If these people were to take a look at Crimson City, wouldn't their eyeballs fall out? Yang Chendong's expression was calm, but the people in the audience seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. After listening to the 3 completely different songs, they had gradually accepted this new style of music. There were even a few people who gathered together and began to memorize the lyrics of the 3 songs. One after another, they chatted happily. Those who did such things were either people without status or people who felt that their status was not good enough. For example, the son of Duke Su, Su Qingzong, the second son of Duke Ing, Zhang De, and the grandson of Wang Ji, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Si, did not bother to do such things. Instead, they held their wine glasses and walked over to Yang Chendong's table. Those who were able to come to the 9 Arts Square and become regulars here were all people who loved music. The 3 people who were shocked by the 3 songs took the initiative to walk over to Yang Chendong's table. It was not because he was a secondary class, rank 5 official at such a young age, but because they admired his talent. The 3 songs just now allowed them to understand what it meant to be a high mountain and flowing river, and what it meant to be a heavenly sound. It could be said that the appearance of the three songs had completely overturned their understanding of music. At this moment, they were truly impressed by Yang Chendong's talent. Walking over to him was just an act of goodwill. Naturally, Yang Chendong, who wanted to make friends with influential officials, would not let go of such an opportunity. He immediately drank and chatted merrily with the three people. Including fourth brother Yang, there were 5 people in total. They chatted merrily, and laughter could be heard from time to time. Dong Shuai, these 3 songs of yours are truly unforgettable. It's so refreshing. Su Qingzong, who was shaking his head, said with a flushed face. That's right. Compared to the songs I've heard in the past, it's obvious who's better. I'm afraid that I'll have to suffer in the future. Zhang De, the second son of Duke Ying, had a look of pity on his face, as if he was sad that he would not be able to hear such songs in the future. Sigh, second young master Zhang, you're right. With Dong Shuai around, why would we worry about not being able to hear such beautiful songs in the future? Isn't that right? As Wang Si spoke, he winked at Yang Chendong, clearly saying that if we want to listen to songs in the future, we'll have to look for you. The 3 people here, one asking and one answering, seemed to be expressing their own opinions, but in reality, they were just testing him. Yang Chendong was well aware of this, but he didn't point it out. Instead, he went with the flow and said, in the future, if you want to listen to music, you can't look for me. No matter what, this young master is still a 5th-rank official of the imperial court. If I really do that, those imperial censors will report me to the emperor. When he mentioned the imperial censors, the 3 people's expressions changed. The hierarchy of the dynasty was very strict, and people were divided into 3, 6, and 9 ranks. Entertainers were of a lowly background, and were looked down upon the most. Any large family would not marry a woman of this background, even if they wanted to take a concubine, not to mention that Yang Chendong was a 5th-rank official in the imperial court. Although this official position was only a low-ranking official, and he had received it after offering the potato, it was still an official. Once there was a crown prince in the future, his power would naturally be used. If he were to sing, it would be a scandal. It would be seen as a disgrace to the imperial court. If that really happened, the spittle of the imperial censor would drown the entire imperial court. When that time came, not only Yang Chendong, but the entire Yang family would be implicated. When they thought of the consequences, Su Qingzong and the others could not help but be startled, and then they all shook their heads. Seeing that the 3 of them knew the serious consequences, Yang Chendong chuckled. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that Lady Xiang was looking at him from not far away. Cui No, who was standing beside her, had an anxious look on her face. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he opened his crescent-shaped folding fan with a swish, gently fanning his elegant and handsome face. Come, drink wine. There's wine today, so let's drink in the morning. While calling out to Su Qingzong and the others, Yang Chendong was waiting for the fish to take the bait. On one side of the stage, Lady Xiang clenched her fists. Because she was using too much strength, her slender fingers were starting to turn white. However, she did not care at all. Her gaze was fixed in the direction of Yang Chendong. She pursed her lips and did not speak. She was not as calm as before. Beside Lady Xiang, the middle-aged but still charming Cui No was chattering endlessly. Xiang, do you really plan to take the 6th young master as your master? Although his elder sister was also amazed by the 3 songs he played just now, he was still an official and a noble. We are just the lowest performers, and the difference in status is too great. Even if you are the famous Lady Xiang of the capital, if you want to take him as your master, I'm afraid he will not agree. You will only be asking for your own humiliation. Lady Xiang, who had already gathered some courage, clenched her fists even tighter, and there was a hint of struggle in her eyes. However, in the end, she still did not take the step, as if her feet were tied to a boulder. Yang Chendong, who was sitting there drinking wine and chatting with his new friends, noticed that Lady Xiang did not come over in the end. Instead, she disappeared on the side of the stage with the help of Cui No, the procuress. He could not help but sigh in his heart. It seems that I have overestimated Lady Xiang. She is a woman after all, and her status is still inferior. She doesn't even have the courage to ask me for advice. Originally, I planned to take her as my subordinate after I appeared today, but I have to give up for the time being. Although the plan had encountered some temporary difficulties, in Yang Chendong's view, it was not a bad thing. At least tonight, he had made a name for himself with the 3 songs. Lady Xiang might have had too many concerns, but there would eventually be bold female artists. Opportunities were always for those who were prepared. After drinking 3 more cups of wine, the sound of the watchman rang out on the street outside the Geo Arts workshop. 1 hour. Chapter 69. There was a night ban in the Ming dynasty. The rules were clear. Once the drum was rung at 3 o'clock in the morning, no one was allowed to go out. Only after the morning bell was rung at 3 o'clock in the morning would the ban be lifted. Those who walked on the streets during the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th night would be flogged 50 times. Those who broke the law after the 1st night ban and before the 5th night ban would be flogged 40 times. As soon as the drum was rung, the guests in the hall began to walk out. Yang Chendong lived outside the capital, so he naturally had to be 1 step ahead. Otherwise, he would not be able to make it to the southern city gate in time. Everyone, it's time. Farewell. Yang Chendong stood up and cupped his fists at Su Qingzong and the others. Take care, Dong Shuai. Su Qingzong and the others stood up with smiles on their faces. Although they had just met, they felt regretful that they had not met sooner. If there was anything Yang Chendong gained tonight other than making a name for himself, it was probably making these 3 friends. Of course, more importantly, the news of the 3 new songs spread rapidly in the capital that night. By the next day, there were already people on the streets humming the new songs that were fresh and catchy. The tip of the peach leaf is the tip of the tip, the willow leaves hold up the sky. My dear lord, listen to me carefully. In the morning, the servant girl, Little Wire, went out to buy breakfast as usual. As soon as she walked out of the courtyard, she heard 2 scholarly young men humming this song that she had never heard before. For a moment, Little Wire felt a refreshing feeling rush into her heart. For a moment, she stood there and listened in a daze. It was not until the 2 scholars were far away that she came back to her senses. Then, with a heart full of curiosity, she went to the nearest breakfast shop. When she returned to the courtyard after buying breakfast and saw the young lady getting dressed, she absent-mindedly placed the breakfast box on the round wooden table. Then, she rested her chin on her hands and carefully recalled the song she heard in her mind. Then she hummed softly. After snorting twice, she shook her head forcefully. Her face was filled with anxiety, as if she had lost something she loved. Little Wire, what's wrong with you? After repeated this, Little Wire was still immersed in her own world. The young Miss's voice, which was as pleasant as an oriole's, entered his ears. What are you humming? It sounds really nice. Young Miss. At this time, Xiao Wei felt as if she had just woken up from a dream, but her forehead was already covered in sweat. I heard 2 people humming this song when I went out to buy breakfast. It gave me a refreshing feeling, so I learned a few lines. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to remember it. At this moment, Xiao Wei looked as if she hated herself to the core, as if not remembering the lyrics and melody was a huge mistake. What? The young lady's expression suddenly changed. Xiao Wei, are you saying that the song you were humming just now was a new song that people on the streets were singing? Miss, is this a new song? What kind of new song is it? Why haven't I heard it before? The young miss, whose arm was being held by the maid Xiao Wei, had not yet fully put on her clothes. Under the red dress, her slender neck was undoubtedly exposed. Her soft breasts were like white jade, half covered. Her waist was tied, and a pair of slender and well-proportioned legs were exposed. Even her beautiful lotus feet were silently enchanting, as if inviting people to look at her seductively. If there were people who frequented the red light district here, they would definitely exclaim, Madame Xue, and call out her identity. Madame Xue's full name was Xiao Yuxue. She was one of the famous courtesans in the red light district of the capital. Together with Madame Xiang, Dong Hanxiang, they were called half of the beauties in the city. It meant that both of them were more beautiful than half of the city. If they were combined, They would be the most beautiful woman in the city. Last night, Madame Xiang was resting in the backyard of Baihua Hall because of her female physiology. Moreover, she was young and sleepy, so she did not know what had happened in Jiu Art's workshop. Naturally, she did not know about the 3 new songs. When she woke up early in the morning, she heard her maid Xiaowei humming softly. She was attracted and wanted to ask what was going on. Of course it's a new song. You know what I do. If it's an old song, it's impossible that I haven't heard of it. Her tone was very certain. Madame Xue not only had snow-white skin, but also a beautiful voice. She was also very proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. If it was an old song, she would definitely have heard of it. It's a new song. Miss, you should learn it quickly. When you sing it, more people will come to our Baihua Hall. Then, we will be able to suppress Jiu Art's workshop. Xiaowei looked excited. Of course, whether it was because she wanted to listen to this song was unknown to outsiders. But Madame Xue's red lips opened slightly. She really looked like she was exhaling. Since it's a new song, of course you haven't heard of it. If you have the time, why don't you go and find out where it came from? Oh, I'll go right away. The lively Xiaowei agreed and rushed out of the room. When she saw Madame Xue, whose clothes were still slightly untidy, she shook her head. Xiaowei is already 16 years old, but she still does things carelessly. I don't know who will marry her in the future. When it came to marriage, Madame Xue could not help but frown slightly. She thought of her own family background and Xiaowei's family background. People like them did not have the right to pursue happiness. Perhaps the best ending for them was to grow old in Baihua Hall. But when she grew old, would there be a place for her here? Courtesan. It sounded like she was quite famous. But in the end she was just eating the rice of youth. Once she grew old, her popularity would decline day by day. At that time, there would naturally be younger and more beautiful girls to replace her. After a long time, no one would remember her glory when she was young. Just like the lyrics of the later generations said, "One wrong step, and you'll regret it forever." Dancers were also human. Who could she tell the pain in her heart? For the oppression of life, she swallowed her tears. Is this fate? Destined to live the rest of my life? It was because of the experience of countless predecessors that people like Madame Xue had long been prepared for it. She just wanted to earn more money while she was young. In this way, she would be able to feed herself when she grew old. The appearance of a new song was often the best opportunity. It could turn a person from a nobody to a world-famous person. At that time, there would naturally be some rich benefactors. With many followers, it would be the most glorious time of their lives. Madame Xue had a feeling that this song was so fresh and different from what she had learned before. Once she learned it, she would definitely become popular. She must learn this song. In the Hu mansion, Hu Yan got up, ate, and read as usual. Of course, the so-called reading was not the wonderful stories in Yang's newspaper, but the books on women's discipline and women's ethics that modern women must learn. As a woman, she had to marry and spend most of her life in her husband's family. How to be a good wife and take care of the family affairs for her husband was something that most women dealt with in their lives. If one wanted to do something, he naturally had to do it with his behavior. This required a woman to be educated and reasonable, and to learn the 3 obedience and 4 virtues. The so-called 3 obedience and 4 virtues were the foundation of a woman's life. The 3 obedience referred to obey the father before marriage, to obey the husband after marriage, and to obey the son after the husband's death. The 4 virtues referred to virtue, appearance, speech, and work. That is to say, as a woman, the most important thing was moral character, to be able to stand upright. Then it was appearance, meaning that one should be dignified, steady, and courteous, not frivolous and casual. Speech, meaning that when conversing with others, one should be able to casually add meaning, be able to understand what others are saying and know what one should and shouldn't say. And the way of managing a family, includes supporting one's husband and teaching one's children, respecting the old and loving the young, being diligent and thrifty, and other details of life. Not only that, There were also things like the 3 principles and 5 elements, etc. It was because of the etiquette and teachings in these so-called books that women's social status was not very high. If she married a man who liked her and was willing to share everything with her, it would be better. At least she still had the final say in the family. But if she met a man who did not know how to care for her, she would be like Yang Qi and Sister Yang, gradually becoming a servant. Hu Yan's grandfather, Hu Ming, was still alive. Although he was not young anymore, he was still healthy and was an important official in the imperial court. He was one of the 5 ministers entrusted to Xuanzong, and also held the position of Minister of Rights. Her father, Hu Changning, was the governor of the brocade guards and held great power. He was in his 40s and was full of vigor. With such a grandfather and father, Hu Yan did not have to worry for the time being. Even if she married into her husband's family, with such a family, she would not suffer any losses. But in the end, she still had to rely on herself. Relying on her mother's family was not a long-term solution. This required Hu Yan to be strong enough in order to live a life without worry. Naturally, things like female morality and female discipline were compulsory homework every day. Perhaps she was spoiled by her grandfather and father, but when Hu Yan read these books, she would feel sleepy. Although she had just woken up not long ago, her eyes were still listless. Her head also seemed to lack some support. From time to time, her head would fall down, but she still managed to hold on, making her look extremely adorable. Young Mississippi, Hu Yan, who was hesitating whether or not to fight 300 rounds with the Duke of Zhou, was instantly awakened by a series of screams. At that moment, the Duke of Zhou was so frightened that he ran off to who knows where. After the screams, the servant girl Xiao Qing rushed into the study, bringing with her a whirlwind. If she ran 100 meters at this speed, she should be able to barely pass. Chapter 70. Little Qing. Looking at the maidservant who was sweating profusely and was not reserved at all, Hu Yan pretended to be angry and scolded angrily with her small mouth. Don't you know what it means to be prudent and reserved? Look at you now, you don't look like a maidservant of the Hu family. You have been with me for so long, why can't you learn? Hu Yan still looked like she wanted to seize the opportunity to teach little Qing a lesson. Unexpectedly, little Qing did not listen to this at all. Instead, she looked at Hu Yan with a pair of bright black eyes and said, Miss, Dong Shui went to the red light district last night. What? A simple sentence was enough to make Hu Yan, who wanted to pretend to be a miss, suddenly change her attitude. Her originally pouting mouth was already wide open, but then she suddenly closed it tightly and said with a voice that was close to gnashing her teeth, I didn't expect that he is also such a shameless man. Originally, she wanted to come here to take credit and also to prove that her identity as a spy lived up to her name. She did not expect that one sentence would cause the miss to misunderstand her meaning. Little Qing quickly corrected herself and said, Wrong. Dong Shui did go to the red light district, but it was not an ordinary place of prostitution. He went to Geo Art's workshop. Not only that, he also sang 3 songs there. I heard that each song made people feel refreshed and shocked. This time, little Qing did not dare to hold back in the slightest and said everything that she had heard in one breath. What? He knows how to sing? He knows music? At this moment, Hu Yan realized that she had misunderstood Yang Chendong. However, at this moment, she would not admit that she was wrong, because her body and mind had been attracted by a better topic. Not only does he know, I heard that one of the songs was about a tragic love story. It was about a long time ago, there was a firearms camp. Song Laosan's family lived next to them. They had nothing to do, and then there was a man called Little Six and a girl called Big Lotus. Little Qing also knew half of it and did not completely understand. She only heard it repeated by others. Things that passed through other people's ears were not very clear. Hu Yan was a very smart girl. She was able to make out the gist of it. He's the 6th young master. Could this little 6th be referring to him? Could that De Lien be a girl he knows in Janning? Does he really know how to act out a story for fun? I heard that Dong Shui not only knows it, but he is also very good at it. After one song, even Lady Xiang, who is famous for her beauty, was ashamed. She took the initiative to give up the stage and retreated. She did not have the face to come out again. Xiaoqing thought about how she had spent some money and heard the story of the scholar who happened to be at Jiu's shop last night. She couldn't help but feel excited. Was there anything this Dong Shuai wouldn't do? Is there such a thing? Hu Yan's eyes were naturally wide open, and her face was full of joy. She felt as if she had done something great. Of course, I also heard that the top courtesan of Hundred Flowers Hall, Lady Shui, who is also famous for her beauty, has rushed to Yang village in the south of the city in a sedan chair. She said that she wants to be apprenticed to a master. The more little Qing spoke, the bigger her eyes became. That was an expression of being honored, as if she was the one who had been acknowledged as a master. Hu Yan, who was listening in riddles, immediately blushed when she heard that Lady Shui was going to Yang village to be apprenticed to a master. Shameless. How can Dong Shuai accept someone like her as his disciple? If she can't go, she will just be asking for trouble. As if she had made an assertion, Hu Yan said, Dong Shuai can sing at home if he knows how to sing. Why does he have to go to Jiu Art's workshop? Isn't he afraid that the imperial censors and imperial censors will impeach him? As she spoke, she put her fist to her lips as if she was anxious about something. When little Qing saw this scene, she immediately laughed out loud. Miss, who are you to Dong Shuai? Why are you so anxious for him? I am him. When Hu Yan said this, she suddenly realized that she had been tricked by little Qing. Her face immediately turned red. She clenched her fist and fiercely chased after little Qing. For a moment, the two young women started a marathon competition in the study. In the imperial court, the officials were in a good mood today. It was probably because they saw the high-yield grain that could produce more than 20 dan of grain yesterday, which solved a big problem for the development of the Great Ming Dynasty. Now, everyone was smiling. Even colleagues who were not close to each other nodded to each other when they saw each other, which was rare for them to be magnanimous. Zhu Qizhen was also in a good mood. Last night, in Empress Qian's bedroom, he was really praised. Speaking of Empress Qian, she was really well-behaved, virtuous, and gentle. She was born in Haizhou. Her father, Qian Ge, was a military commander. She was made empress in 1442. From then on, she only had one person in her eyes, Zhu Qizhen. In other people's eyes, Zhu Qizhen was Emperor Yingzong. But in Empress Qian's eyes, he was her husband, her sky. She dedicated all her love to this person. In the history of the Great Ming Dynasty, Emperor Yingzong was captured by Yes Hen during the Tumu Rebellion. In order to welcome Yingzong back to the court, she sent out all the assets in her palace. Every day, she mourned and prayed for the gods to bless Yingzong. When she was tired, she would lie down on the ground, which caused one of her legs to be disabled. She cried all day and cried until one of her eyes was blind. Later, Emperor Yingzong returned to the capital and was imprisoned in the Nangong Palace. During this period, life was difficult. Empress Qian used hand knitting to support the two of them. This lasted for 7 years. After Zhu Qizhen died, he was afraid that Empress Qian would be bullied by imperial concubine Zhou. He specially ordered Empress Qian to have the honor of being buried with me after she passed away. It could be said that Empress Qian was a model of virtue. Normally, it was very difficult to get such a person to flatter him and say a few words of praise. However, after seeing the potatoes at Yangjia village, Empress Qian acted out of character. She praised Yingzong endlessly, saying that it was because the emperor was virtuous that he was bestowed with such a high-yielding and auspicious item. She said that Yingzong should devote himself to state affairs and work hard for the prosperity of the Great Ming Dynasty. After receiving Empress Qian's praise, he was much more enthusiastic and proactive when serving the emperor in bed. This caused Zhu Qizhen to wake up in the morning with a face full of radiance. He was unable to contain his joy and was in a good mood. When the emperor's mood was good, the officials were naturally happy as well. During the morning court, the officials became much more amiable. Some of the matters that were reported seemed to have been resolved satisfactorily. Nearly 2 hours passed. Ingzong was several times more efficient than usual and dealt with several major matters in succession. When he saw that the officials were satisfied, Ingzong was also happy. Zhu Qizhen himself liked this kind of scene where everyone was happy. Wouldn't it be best for everyone to be happy? Good. The atmosphere in the court today is very good. The emperor and his officials are of one mind. Zhen is very happy. Zhu Qizhen said with a happy and satisfied expression. After saying this, he raised his right hand. This was his usual action. He was preparing to end court. Just as Wang Zhen, the head of the ceremony directorate, was about to shout, "End court," a person suddenly walked out of the room. This person had a short stature, and as soon as he left the room, he fell to his knees and said, "Your Majesty, this subject, Su Yozhen, has a memorial." This official heard that in the red light district last night, the newly appointed crown prince Yang Chendong sang loudly in the 9 Arts workshop. He actually dared to share the stage with an actress. This is truly a disgrace to an official. This official asks the emperor to punish him. With such a good situation, Ingzong was in a happy mood. Suddenly, a person like this appeared. Not only did he kneel down and shout, he actually criticized the crown prince who had made a great contribution yesterday, Yang Chendong. This shout caused the originally harmonious scene between the emperor and his officials to change. When all the officials looked at Su Yozhen, their faces were filled with anger. As an official of the court, going to the red light district was a disgrace. Especially when he dared to share the stage with an actress, it was a disgrace to an official. Su Yozhen was an imperial censor in the imperial censorate and was even a 7th-rank official. It wasn't wrong for him to spread rumors. However, he also needed to look at the time and situation, right? Just yesterday, the emperor had just appointed Yang Chendong as the crown prince's horse Washington. Today, he went to impeach him? What did this mean? Was he trying to say that the emperor was capricious? At this moment, not only were the officials angry, even Ingzong's face was filled with displeasure. Wang Zhen, who was standing beside him, glared fiercely at Right Capital Imperial Censor Qin. His meaning was that this was his subordinate. How could he not know when to advance or retreat and be so tactless? Regarding this, Right Capital Imperial Censor Qin also had an expression of being wronged. Although he was the head of the imperial censor, not all imperial censors needed his approval before they could submit a memorial. However, everyone who was on duty had this authority. They would give you face and greet you. However, there were countless cases where they didn't give you face and suddenly attacked you. It was clear that this time, Su Yozhen didn't communicate with him. Instead, she chose to reprimand him in front of the court. Most of the time, people who reprimand him would offend people. Usually, this kind of person wouldn't have a good ending in the future. After all, in the officialdom, if you respect me, I'll return you 10 feet. If you're good, I'm good, everyone will be good. However, if there were people who didn't want to be united and wanted to cause trouble, they would naturally not be tolerated by everyone. However, the imperial censors didn't belong to this category. Their original duty was to reprimand and complain about injustice. They would spread the news to the imperial court and deliver it to the emperor's ears. Therefore, in terms of duty, Su Yozhen's actions weren't wrong. Not only that, the emperor couldn't kill him. Not killing the imperial censors was originally set by Ming dynasty's first ancestor, Zhu Yuanzhong. Although Ingzong wasn't happy with Su Yozhen's actions, he couldn't do anything. He could only retract his right hand that he was about to raise. He then looked at the officials and asked, "Let's discuss this. How should we handle this matter?" Chapter 71. He said, "Handle, not deal." This in itself was a clear indication of Ingzong's attitude. He'd only been promoted yesterday because he'd offered up a potato. If Yang Chendong hadn't been so young, a minor 5th-rank position would have been a bit too light. Zhu Qizhen had just said that when the Immortal abode opened for business, he would attend if he had the time. This was a disguised form of compensation. All of the officials were well aware of this, but none of them objected. After all, this was what Yang Chendong deserved. But it had only been a day. It hadn't even been 24 hours yet. Yet someone was already impeaching Yang Chendong. How was this a memorial? This was clearly a slap to the emperor's face. As the saying went, if the Lord was humiliated, the subject would die. All of the officials knew that they had an obligation and a responsibility to absolve Yang Chendong today. Otherwise, if they judged others by their own standards, wouldn't it be possible for them to be rewarded one day and taken back the next? Regardless of whether the lips were gone, the teeth would feel cold, or whether officials would protect each other, the officials had no choice but to stand in Yang Chendong's shoes. However, before the officials could think of a way to express their stance, another person stepped forward. When he stepped forward with his ceremonial tablet in hand, the officials knew something was wrong. Some of them even revealed anxious expressions. Reporting to Your Majesty, this subject Yu Qian agrees with Governor Su's request. As an official of the court, he should strictly abide by the law. However, not only did he wander around the brothels, he even dared to sing on the same stage as an entertainer. This is truly a loss of face for us court officials. Your Majesty, please issue an edict to punish him. As he spoke, the proud left assistant minister of the Ministry of War, Yu Qian, knelt on the ground and bowed. Yu Qian, courtesy name Tingyi, was from Qianting. He had studied diligently since his youth and had lofty ambitions. He admired Wen Tianxiang's integrity and had kept Wen Tianxiang's image at his side for decades. This Yu Qian was not the great master who smoked, permed his hair and drank wine, but he was actually one of the loyal and famous ministers of the Ming dynasty. He attached importance to reputation and integrity, to fame and fortune. When he died, his family did not have any wealth left. He attached importance to dying for a benevolent cause, to death. After the Tumu Fort rebellion, he fought to the death in Walla without retreating. He attached importance to the country, to the emperor. After the Tumu Fort rebellion, when we elected Zhu Qiyu as the emperor, we claimed that we were doing it for the sake of the country, not for our own personal interests. Yu Qian was so strong that even Wang Zhen couldn't do anything to him. He was one of the few officials who made Steward Wang feel helpless. At this moment, he stood out and supported Su Yozhen, making the situation even more complicated and serious. This subject has a different opinion. The Minister of Revenue, Wang Zue, stepped forward, as if he was afraid that there would be other officials who would agree with him. Zhu Qizhen, who was frowning, suddenly heard an official say that he had a different opinion. He was startled and said, "Speak." Your Majesty, although the Nine Arts Workshop is in the red light district, it is not a place where one can seek pleasure. It can be considered a pure land. Yang Shima going there isn't a violation of the rules. Wang Zue spoke first, separating the Nine Arts Workshop from the red light district. This was his excuse. Secondly, of the 6 arts of a gentleman, there is the word music. Yang Shima created Yang Bao, and his many talents have long been known to the world. It is nothing much for him to sing a few songs. On the contrary, this subject feels that this is because he understands the affairs of the people and can show the style of a minister. A minister is omnipotent and knows everything. Thirdly, Yang Shima is still young and has just entered the capital. It is inevitable that he would be attracted by the prosperity here and do some inappropriate things. This is completely understandable. With these 3 points, this subject pleads for Your Majesty to be merciful and not punish Yang Shima to show Your Majesty's magnanimity. After speaking, Wang Zue kowtowed to the ground and shouted, "Long live the Emperor," before kowtowing again. The moment Wang Zue stepped forward, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Zhi, stepped forward as well. This morning his grandson, Wang Si, came forward to pay his respects. Kneeling on the ground, he recounted the events that happened at the Nine Arts Workshop in detail. Using his own words, if not for his provocation, Yang Chendong wouldn't have gone on stage to sing, and there wouldn't have been any trouble. If the censors were to impeach him, he hoped that his grandfather would speak up for him. Otherwise, if Yang Chendong were to be punished as an accomplice, he wouldn't be in a good position either. After hearing the story, Wang Zhi was infuriated. This grandson of his was good at everything. He was hard-working in his studies and diligent in his work. However, he loved to be in the limelight too much, and he loved to wander around those red light districts. He had already brought up this matter more than once. Yet, not only was his grandson unrepentant, he even caused a huge commotion. As the royal court was about to start, Wang Ji didn't have the time to reprimand his grandson. He only wanted to talk about it after he returned from the royal court. However, he didn't expect that someone would still use this as an excuse. Seeing that the emperor and the officials had the same attitude, Wang Ji hesitated for a moment before stepping forward to speak up for Yang Chendong. Your Majesty, this subject believes that Lord Wang's words are appropriate. Who hasn't been young and frivolous? Furthermore, Yang Shima's song has nothing to do with the political situation. Please give him a chance on account of his contributions. After Wang Ji finished speaking, he picked up his ceremonial tablet and knelt on the ground with a plop. Even though Yang Shima's actions sound ridiculous, it is just a joke among the young. This subject believes that there is no need to discuss it in the royal court. This old subject hopes that your Majesty won't pay too much attention to it. The Minister of Rights, Hu Kuang, also slowly knelt on the ground. As the Minister of Rights, even he believed that Yang Chendong's actions didn't violate the rules of etiquette. Naturally, others couldn't say anything. Including Hu Kuang, there were 3 important officials speaking up for Yang Chendong. With these 3 officials at the front, the other officials all knelt on the ground and voiced their agreement. Even Wang Zhen, who was standing next to the emperor, took this opportunity to whisper to Zhu Qizhen, Your Majesty, Yang Shima's actions aren't harmful at all, so there is no need to pursue this matter. Your Majesty can have him open a restaurant and do business, so what's the big deal about singing a few songs? Your Majesty is completely free to make your own decisions. In addition, the imperial censor's words should also be rewarded, and this matter can be settled. The Immortal abode was about to open, and Wang Zhen had a 10% stake in it. Who knew how much more income they would get in that month? If something were to happen now, the Immortal abode would definitely be implicated. This was tantamount to harming their own interests, so they naturally had to speak up. With the officials pleading for leniency and Wang Zhen's words, Ying Zong understood what was going on. After lightly rubbing his forehead, he spoke in a clear voice. This subject's words are reasonable. Yang Shima is merely young and restless, and he has just arrived in the capital. Everything is new to him, so it is reasonable for him to do something that is slightly out of line. There is no need to pursue this matter any further. As for Supervisor Su, he is diligent and responsible in his work. He will be rewarded and promoted to the position of Supervisor of the Imperial Censorate's Bureau of Experience. The Imperial Censorate's Bureau of Experience was a 6th-rank official. Compared to his previous 7th-rank official position, it was a 2-rank promotion. This could be considered an explanation for this person's actions. The officials were immediately overjoyed, all of them cheering for the emperor's wisdom. Just when everyone thought that the matter had been resolved and all the officials were about to stand up, who would have thought that the newly promoted imperial censor Su Yozhen would continue to kowtow to the ground and ask, Your Majesty, if Yang Shima continues to sing songs in the future, can you make an exception and not pursue this matter? His Majesty has already promoted you, but you still want to bite on this matter and not let it go. This means that you don't know how to do things, you don't know how to conduct yourself. For a moment, some of the officials looked at him with stern eyes. The feeling that Su Yozhen gave them before was not like this. This person was smooth and slick and very good at dealing with people. Transferring him to the Imperial Censorate was just a way to gain experience and accumulate experience. But why was this person so stubborn today? Did he want to provoke the Emperor's displeasure? At this moment, Ying Zong was indeed a little angry. Seeing that Su Yozhen still wanted to hold on to this matter and not let it go, he loudly reprimanded. Zhen said, Yang Shima is young and restless, and he is multi-talented. Yang Shima's story was his doing. Since writing a story can be accepted by everyone, so what if he sings a song? In the future, there is no need to report such matters. If you have the time, why don't you observe the suffering of the common people and see if the officials are doing their best? It was clear that Ying Zong had a problem with the Imperial Censorate. Right Imperial Censorate Chen Yi lowered his head and did not dare to say anything. Feeling that Ingzong's anger was not good, the other officials naturally did not dare to say anything. Only Su Yozhen, who did not know where he got the courage, actually knelt on the ground and shouted, "This official knows. In the future, if there is anything related to Yang Shima, it will not be reported." Ingzong also angrily glared at Su Yozhen. Then, without waiting for Wang Zhen to call for the court to end, he got up and left the dragon throne. The officials also left with the emperor. Even Right Imperial Censor Chen did not pay attention to Su Yozhen, who was still kneeling on the ground, and left with the other officials. Soon, there were only two people left in the entire court. One was the kneeling Su Yozhen, and the other was the left assistant minister of the Ministry of War, Yu Qian. Official Su, quickly get up. The emperor and the officials have all left. Reaching out his hand to help Su Yozhen up, Yu Qian's face was filled with admiration. Yu Qian was upright and plain-spoken. Even with Wang Zhen's power, he did not lower his head, and the other party could not do anything to him. It was very difficult to make such a person admire others. But now, Su Yozhen did it. Being helped up by Yu Qian, Su Yozhen was flattered. "Official Yu, many thanks, many thanks." "Official Su, there is no need to be like this. I should be the one thanking you. Imperial censors should be like Official Su, not fearing power, and report to the emperor. Even if the person you are referring to has made a great contribution, it is still the same." When he said these words, Yu Qian's words were righteous, and his face was solemn. Not only did he say this, in fact, he had always done things this way. However, he did not notice that at this moment, Su Yozhen's face was filled with shame. Only he himself knew why he would do such a thing today. His heart was far from being as pure and holy as Yu Qian seemed. On the contrary, it was extremely dirty. It was just that it was not enough for people to understand. Official Yu is too modest, too modest. Drenched in cold sweat, Su Yozhen was afraid that he would unknowingly give himself away if he stayed, so he cupped his fists and bid farewell. Yu Qian was left standing alone in the court, his gaze seemingly piercing through the imperial city, piercing through the capital, and reaching the Yang clan manor in the southern part of the city. "Yang Chendong, Yang Chendong, first you made a report to control the direction of public opinion, and then you made such a ruckus the moment you arrived in the capital. Just what are you thinking? Are you an official or a merchant? Are you loyal or treacherous?" Chapter 72. Yesterday could be said to be a busy day. In the morning, Yang Chendong first beat seventh brother-in-law Wang Go, then beat the drum of the imperial court, went to the imperial court, saw the emperor, and presented him with the auspicious and high-yielding potato. In the afternoon, he saw his eldest brother, second brother, and the others, whom he had not seen for a long time. In the evening, he went to the red light district, 9 arts workshop, and made 3 astonishing songs. After returning to the Yang family manor, Yang Chendong fell asleep immediately. It was not until the sun was high in the sky that he got out of bed with the help of his maid Xiao Yin. It wasn't that Yang Chendong insisted on using Xiao Yin's help. For this matter, he had refused many times. Until one day, Xiao Yin cried in front of him and asked if the young master didn't want her anymore. This caused Yang Chendong to have no choice but to give in. It had to be said that the men of this era were very fortunate. After tidying up properly, the kitchen maid Yi Qiu had already prepared breakfast on the round table. As he ate in big bites, he listened to Tiger's Mane, who was standing beside him, report the matters of today's imperial court. "Young master, after Su Yozhen received our money, she indeed went to court today to impeach you. After that, the officials pleaded for leniency. The emperor also said that in the future, there is no need to report anything related to you." Tiger's Mane widened his eyes and looked at Yang Chendong with a gaze full of admiration. His reverence was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. Just last night, when he left the 9 arts workshop, Yang Chendong handed the task to Tiger's Mane. He had someone bring enough money to find an imperial censor called Su Yozhen. Then he did the same thing. When he first received the task, Tiger's Mane was naturally very puzzled. He couldn't understand what the young master was trying to do. Spending money to hire someone to impeach him? Was he crazy? However, after a long period of training, his nature of obedience had been cultivated. In the end, he still did as he was told. Sure enough, after finding Su Yozhen's house, he snuck into the courtyard and took out 2,000 taels of silver. That person's eyes lit up, and he only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. This led to today's morning court session. All of this seemed to be because someone was jealous of Yang Chendong's rise in power. Everyone followed this train of thought. Who would have thought that this was just a self-written and self-directed play by the sixth young master? Taking advantage of the fact that he had just offered up an auspicious item, there would certainly be no result if someone tried to impeach him. The ministers were thinking about dying if the lips were cold and the teeth were cold. The emperor was thinking about his own face. All of this was calculated by Yang Chendong, so he took this risk. The benefits of taking the risk were obvious. In the future, no one in the imperial court would bring up this matter again. In this way, he could openly be a rich man, a true official businessman, a person who was recognized by everyone as rich. Everyone knew that he had money, so when he did things, it would naturally be much smoother, and he would have fewer worries. As for why he used Su Yozhen and not someone else, this was the advantage of Yang Chendong's prophetic ability. Su Yozhen had a short stature and an ordinary appearance, but he was very intelligent. He liked fame and was good at reading people's expressions. In history, when Mingyingzong was restored, he had made a great contribution. Later on, he became an important minister with great power. During this time, he had also engaged in open and secret struggles with Shi Heng and Chao Jixiang within the ruling class. This kind of person clearly had some ability, and he valued benefits. He also had the identity of an imperial censor. If he didn't use him, wouldn't it be a waste? The ancients had long said that it was better to offend a gentleman than a villain. Based on this principle, Yang Chendong interacted with a gentleman based on the principle of respect. Towards villains, he used benefits to pull them together. In this way, he could take care of all aspects and eliminate many dangers invisibly. Naturally, people like Su Yozhen should be used well. If he really had talent, he would be given the opportunity to show it. But when it came to sincere friendship, it was far from enough. Not bad. After listening to Tiger's Mane's report of the situation, Yang Chendong smiled with satisfaction. Your people in the security bureau have worked hard. Reward the relevant personnel with 100 taels of silver. As the bureau chief, you can deal with it as you see fit. Rewards should be given for meritorious service. This was a principle that Yang Chendong deeply remembered. Only then would more people be willing to work for you and do things with peace of mind. Thank you, young master. Tiger's Mane said with slight excitement. 100 taels of silver was naturally nothing to the security bureau, which spent money like water. What was important was Yang Chendong's satisfaction with their work. This was what they pursued. By the way, young master, a sedan chair has arrived outside the Yang family manor. One of the ladies even handed over a name card. Where's the name card? Yang Chendong asked as he put the last bite of breakfast into his mouth and clapped his hands. That is with Xiao Yin. Tiger's Mane lowered his head, not daring to look at Yang Chendong. Yang Chendong smiled, then got up and went to the study next door. Sure enough, there was a name card neatly placed on the wooden table with beautiful words written on it. Xiao Yin was very sensible. She wouldn't make things difficult for Yang Chendong on important matters. She just wanted to throw a tantrum and let people know that she knew some things, and even some things that she didn't like. Yang Chendong also saw this as another kind of beauty for girls, the beauty of jealousy. He knew that this was Xiao Yin's way of reminding him not to get too close to the lady who came to see him. He smiled and took the name card. The name of the name card was, for the sixth young master Yang Chendong. When he opened it, a fragrant smell immediately assailed his nostrils. There was also a line of beautiful words written on it. Your servant, Xiao Yuxue, greets the sixth young master Yang Chendong. Please don't refuse. Jun Yuxue? Yang Chendong took the name card and walked out of the study to Tiger's mane, who had a respectful expression on his face. Knowing that this was a question for him, Tiger's mane thought for a moment before the identity of this person popped up in his mind. Young master, Xiao Yu Xue is Lady Xue's name. Oh, so it's Lady Xue. She's smart. By the way, is Lady Xiang here yet? Yang Chendong recalled Dong Hanxiang's struggling expression last night. Tiger's mane shook his head and scolded Lady Xiang in his heart for not being sensible enough. The young master Yang Chendong personally went to your 9 arts workshop and sang 3 songs. You don't know how to take advantage of such an opportunity? It really makes one speechless. Yang Chendong's face clearly flashed with a hint of loneliness. It was unknown whether he was feeling pity for Lady Xiang or lamenting the outdated views of people nowadays. Forget it. Since Lady Xue came in person, I'll just meet her. If she's a talent, I'm willing to teach the young master Yang Chendong a few things. This is Lady Xiang's fortune, Tiger's mane said enviously when he heard that this lady could be taught by the young master Yang Chendong in person. As the Yang family's system expanded, the chances of being taught by the 6th young master Yang Chendong in person became fewer and fewer. Whenever there was an opportunity, everyone would try their best to seize it. How about this? Inform the people to enter the manor. Also, find Xiaoyin and arrange for someone to send out the things I prepared when I returned last night. Remember, don't miss out on a single family. Send out all the gifts to the manors of the 5th rank officials in the capital. Also, don't miss out on the families of my brothers and sisters. Yang Chendong didn't want to offend people by sending out gifts. That wouldn't be worth it. Tiger's mane naturally knew about this and immediately agreed. However, he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he looked hesitant. What's wrong? Is there something else? Yang Chendong knew that Tiger's mane had something to ask, so he looked at him curiously. Our people from the Bureau of Security have found out that someone is asking around about the young master's past. Tiger's mane had just said this when he felt the atmosphere in the room become oppressive. He saw Yang Chendong's expression become extremely solemn, even a little cold. Who is it? The young master. It's not just anyone. It's Hu Yan, the granddaughter of the Minister of Rights, Hu Yan, the daughter of the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Changning. This is some information on her. Tiger's mane took out a small book from his bosom and turned to leave. This matter wasn't about someone worrying about the 6th young master's safety. It was highly likely that it was about the love between a man and a woman. Even though he was the young master's subordinate, he couldn't interfere in this matter. It's actually a woman? Yang Chendong was also a little dizzy from this sudden turn of events. When he looked at the small book, it recorded in detail about Hu Yan. It also emphasized that this woman was already 16 years old. However, until now, no one had discovered that someone had gone to bring her forward. After an investigation by the Bureau of Security, they found out that it was Hu Changning's idea. The small book also recorded that Hu Yan was educated and well-mannered. Moreover, she was as beautiful as a fairy. She was also clever and cute. Looking at this, how could Yang Chendong not know what this meant? At this moment, the matter of Hu Zhangning breaking into the Yang family's old house in Fangjianing Mansion was naturally figured out in an instant. At this moment, Yang Chendong understood that Hu Zhangning's worship of his parents at that time was fake, and his observation of himself was real. The daughter of the Hu family seems to come from a good background. Yang Chendong thought and smiled. No wonder Tiger's man reported the situation to him after being pestered like this. He must have known the importance of this matter. To be honest, if the Bureau of Security hadn't found out that someone was investigating the 6th young master this time, they naturally wouldn't have noticed Hu Yan, and the following things wouldn't have happened. Well, it's better to let nature take its course when it comes to love. After reading the small book, Yang Chendong put it in a small cabinet in the study. For him, it was still too early to talk about love. How to successfully lay a good foundation was the most important thing. In the side hall of the Yang family's manor, Madame Xue was sitting with the servant girl Xiaowei. Even though he was seated, he still had a nervous expression on his face. His face was flushed red, making him look even more enchanting. Chapter 73. Seeing Xiao Yushua's nervousness, Xiao Wei tried to cheer her up. "Miss, you don't have to be so nervous. You can relax. Many childs and young master from noble families have spent money to go to Baihua Hall just to see you. The sixth young master is also a man. He must be the same as them." "It's not the same," Madame Shui retorted. "You've read the wonderful stories in Yang's Daily. And the song you hum today, the touching love story. How can the person who wrote these things be the same as the other young master? It's not the same." Before they met, Yang Chendong had become a great figure in Madame Shui's heart. It was no wonder that she could not keep calm and was so nervous. Xiao Wei saw that Xiao Yushue seemed to be possessed, so she wanted to comfort her. But at this moment, footsteps came from outside the room. Then Yang Chendong, dressed in cyan, walked into the side hall accompanied by the maid Xiao Yin. He looked indifferent, and his chin was slightly raised at a 45-degree angle. His chiseled face, especially the confident smile on his face, seemed to have a magic power that deeply attracted Madame Shui and Xiao Wei's eyes. Xiao Yin also noticed the two women's behavior and immediately raised her head proudly. In her eyes, the sixth young master was undoubtedly the most perfect man. It was reasonable for other women to look at her young master in this way. While they were looking at Yang Chendong, he was also looking at the two women. In particular, Madame Shui gave him a feeling of déjà vu. Upon closer inspection, he realized that this woman actually had the shadow of Su Qing, an actress from the future. Especially the two shallow dimples on her face, which made her look even more similar. She had a face similar to Su Qing's. Her skin was as white as snow, but she was younger in age. She also had an enchanting temperament. Men who saw her would not only be aroused, but would also have a very primitive behavior. Fortunately, Yang Chendong's self-control was strong enough to suppress the moment his body reacted. Then, he revealed an extremely charming male smile and sat down at the head of the table. He opened the crescent-shaped folding fan in his hand and gently fanned it, looking like an elegant and handsome young master. It was not until Yang Chendong found a chair and sat down that Madame Shui woke up. Thinking of her performance just now, she couldn't help but blush. Then she bent down and said, "Dong Hanxue greets Dong Shui. Please get up." Yang Chendong smiled and stretched out his hand to support Madame Snow. Madame Snow took the opportunity to stand up. Then the sixth young master said with a smile, "I've long heard that Madame Shui is known as half the beauty of the city and is proficient in the beauty of melody. I wonder if I have the honor of listening to the sound from outer space?" Yang Chendong's words made Madame Snow feel relieved. She was most afraid that he would say something about his identity. If so, she, who was originally a lowly person, didn't know how to know. Now that he took the initiative to talk about music, she was very happy. "In that case, I'll make a fool of myself." Madame Snow didn't dare to refuse Yang Chendong's request, not to mention that she had taken the initiative to ask for his help today. She had to be more humble. Madame Snow agreed softly. Then she bowed and said to her maid Xiao Wei, "Prepare the guzheng." Xiao Wei was capable and agile. She quickly placed the guzheng she brought with her in the side hall. Madame Snow walked slowly to the guzheng and sat down. She looked up at Yang Chendong and smiled charmingly. Then her slender fingers fell on the guzheng and gently plucked the strings. "You love me, I love you, 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 I love you." The poem, Locking the South Branch and Molding Clay Figurines, was written by Zhao Mingfu's wife, Guansheng, a master of calligraphy and painting in the early Yuan dynasty. The background story was that when Zhao Mingfu was 50 years old, he wanted to imitate the famous scholars at that time to take a concubine, but he was too embarrassed to tell his wife. His wife knew and wrote this poem. After reading my love poem, Zhao Mingfu was deeply moved and never mentioned taking a concubine again. When Madame Snow sang this song, it had a special charm. It really showed the love of a wife to her husband. For a moment, Xiao Yin, who was standing aside, was mesmerized. There were even tears in her eyes. At this moment, she seemed to see the feeling she should have when her husband married a concubine in the near future. However, Yang Chendong was not asked at all. This had something to do with the fact that he was not used to these greasy songs. At the same time, it was also because he was busy staring at Madame Snow's towering breasts. It had been 3 years since he came to this world. Although he did not get close to women on the grounds that he was still growing, and he did not even have sex with the beautiful Xiao Yin, it did not mean that he did not need it. It was just that there were too many things to do and too much energy to think about it for the time being. Today, there was no one else in the room except himself and the 3 beautiful girls. The budding of youth was somewhat uncontrollable. In particular, Madame Snow's figure was so beautiful and her skin was so white. He could not help but stare at her breasts a few more times. Madame Snow spent all day in the red light district and had seen all kinds of men. Among them, there were many men who would stare at her figure endlessly. Some of them even had very bold gazes. She felt that those men were more vulgar. Sometimes, she would feel a little embarrassed and even a little disgusted. However, today, facing the 6th young master's gaze, not only did she not feel disgusted, but she also felt a little proud, and a little happy and secretly happy. Why was she not angry, but happy? Was it because there was some kind of attraction to the 6th young master that made her not blame him at all? Or was it because she knew that he was a talented man and wanted to get close to him? Madame Snow did not know what she was thinking at the moment. However, Yang Chendong hurriedly withdrew his expression after hearing the song. At the same time, he deliberately straightened his body and used the corner of his eye to observe Xiao Yin, who was standing next to him. Fortunately, Xiao Yin had listened to the song and was completely immersed in it. She did not notice that she had lost her composure just now. Relieved, he smiled at Madame Snow, as if only she and he knew what had happened just now. He coughed softly and said, "Madame Snow's voice is really like the sound of nature, intoxicating. You flatter me, Dong Shuai. I really made a fool of myself. I heard that yesterday in the Geo Arts workshop, Dong Shuai shocked the world with 3 songs. That was the sound of nature. Now, the streets and alleys of the capital are talking about it." While being modest, Madame Snow secretly pointed out what had happened last night. She also took the opportunity to tell Yang Chendong that she had come here for the 3 songs. It's just a casual composition. How can it be the sound of nature? Yang Chendong shook his head and did not admit that the song yesterday was exquisite and wonderful. Madame Snow was a little anxious when she saw that Yang Chendong had denied this matter. She thought that the 6th young master was rejecting her, so she said, "Dong Shuai, I did this for the new song. Since this morning when I heard the new song on the street, I was intoxicated and could not control myself. I sent a letter to you. Please don't refuse. As long as you are willing to teach me the new song, you can tell me any request or condition. I will do my best to satisfy you." When she said the word, satisfy, Madame Snow's face was so delicate that it looked like water could be squeezed out of it. Seeing this, Yang Chendong was also very tempted. If Xiao Yin and Xiao Wei were not present, he was afraid that he would not be able to control his body. Well, only one of the 3 songs is suitable for Madame Snow. No matter how good the song is, it has to be suitable for the person. Yang Chendong forced himself to suppress the thoughts in his heart and said with a smile, "It's just 1 song. That's better than nothing. As long as you can sing 1 song, I think the business of 100 Flowers Hall will be good." Madame Snow was a little disappointed when she heard Yang Chendong's answer, but she quickly thought it through. Chapter 74. Not bad. Yang Chendong nodded with satisfaction after listening to Madame Shui's song. He had to admit that this woman was really talented in this aspect. Being praised by Yang Chendong, Madame Shui was happy and shy at the same time. She was also very happy because she could meet Immortal Dong Shui and learn a new song. What he did next made Madame Shui even more excited and her heart beat faster. "Madame Shui, you seem to like playing the zither. I'll teach you a new song. It's played with the zither. What do you think? Thank you so much, Dong Shuai. Hearing that she was lucky enough to hear the second song, Madame Snow was so excited that she kept bowing with her hands folded in front of her. Well, there are no outsiders here. You don't have to be so polite. Yang Chendong was tired of watching Madame Shui say, "Thank you," a dozen times, so he waved his hand and said casually. But this sentence made Madame Shui blush. The fact that there were no outsiders here obviously made her think the wrong way. As Yang Chendong spoke, he had already arrived in front of the guzheng. Then he leaned over and plucked the strings twice. In the end, he shook his head. With his level, he could barely play the guitar. He really couldn't play the guzheng. Fortunately, the tune of the next song was not complicated. Given Madame Shui's ability to understand it, it would not be a problem for her to learn it after he sang it softly. How about this? I'll sing softly and you'll compose the music. What do you think? Yang Chendong didn't say that he didn't know how to play the zither. Madame Shui was more than happy to sing with Yang Chendong. But she was worried that she couldn't play it well, so she asked nervously and excitedly, Can I? If I say you can, you can. If you can't, you can. Yang Chendong laughed heartily and agreed. Then, he held the folding fan in his hand and paced back and forth. His lips slowly opened and closed as he sang, When will the bright moon appear? With a cup of wine in my hand, I ask the clear sky. I wonder what year it is in the heavenly palace. I want to ride the wind and return home, but I'm afraid it's too cold at the top of the Jade Palace. When I dance, it's like dancing in the shadows. It's not like being in the human world. A water melody of Su Shi of the Song dynasty slowly appeared. It was just an ancient poem, but after being processed by Yang Chendong, it became a very light and unique song. Once this song was played, it immediately gave people a refreshing feeling. It made people feel more intimate and at the same time, they also experienced a different kind of beautiful music. Yang Chendong sang softly, and Madame Shui began to play the guzheng with encouragement in her eyes. In the beginning, they didn't cooperate well because they weren't familiar with each other. But after a while, they had a tacit understanding. When the song was played together, it really gave people a feeling that this song should only exist in the heavens and could only be heard a few times in the human world. After singing softly for 2 more times, Yang Chendong stopped talking and let Madame Shui do everything. Madame Shui talked and sang by herself. Her charm soon surpassed Yang Chendong's and was far above his. The song made Xiao Yin and Xiao Wei feel very emotional. Why didn't they think of making this song into a song before? At this moment, their gazes towards Yang Chendong were filled with worship and reverence. Hu Mansion. Suddenly, a horse carriage drove in from the side door, and a burly man jumped down from the carriage. He looked at the Hu clan's gatekeeper and said, "This is an invitation card from my family's lord." The gatekeeper stepped forward and respectfully picked it up. When he saw the words, "Crown Prince washes his horse," Yang Chendong written on it, he understood. After knowing the other party's identity, he smiled and said, "What can I do for you, Lord Yang?" It's like this. My lord has developed a new kind of soft paper called toilet paper, which is prepared for the nobles after they go to the toilet. As he spoke, the burly man held 2 bags of things in his hands and handed them to the gatekeeper. One is for Minister Hu, and the other is for Lord Hu. Please accept it. After putting down the bags, the burly man left. If Hu Zhangning was here right now, he would definitely recognize him as the Beta Persei who had fought with his 2 subordinates in Jianing Mansion and won. The same scene didn't only appear in front of the Hu Mansion, but also in front of all 5th-rank officials in the capital. In the end, Tiger's Mane led the team to deliver the toilet paper to the Imperial Palace. The difference was that the Imperial Palace received a larger proportion, 10 large bags. The other officials only received 1 bag, while the 2 5th-rank officials in the Hu family naturally received 2 bags. Everyone who received Yang Chendong's gift accepted it. Even Yu Qian, the Ministry of War's attendant who called himself Wen Tianxiang, received a gift. For the family, this was something that rarely happened. The reason why Yu Qian accepted the gift was because he wanted to see what the Crown Prince washes his horse was up to. What was he up to? However, when he saw that the gift was actually toilet paper used after he went to the toilet, he was stunned speechless. This thing was indeed very soft, and was naturally an excellent item for cleansing the body. However, giving this kind of thing was somewhat lacking in the grandeur of a refined scholar. Thinking that this thing probably wasn't worth much, Yu Qian left it here and didn't return it, which made his wife overjoyed. Hu Mansion. The gatekeeper took the 2 bags of toilet paper to the backyard and met with Hu Zhangning's wife. Hu Zhangning's wife, Hu Yushi, was already old and no longer managed the backyard. The Hu family didn't split up, but Hu Zhangning's wife was in charge of the backyard. Madam Hu's surname was Wang, and she was known as Hu Wangshi. When she saw the 2 large bags of toilet paper, she blushed. After she figured out what they were for, she was even more speechless. This 6th young master was also messing around. How could such a thing be so publicly delivered to the residents and even handed to the gatekeeper? Scholars loved face. Although eating, drinking, and going to the toilet was a long-term emotion that no one could avoid, it wasn't good to give such things so publicly. However, since it was already delivered, it wasn't good to return it. Thus, she ordered people to prepare to send the things to the backyard's warehouse. As for whether it was useful or not, she, a woman, couldn't personally try it out due to her face. However, before the item could be sent out, the sound of hurried panting and panicked running could be heard. The person who came was Hu Yan. She heard the maid, Xiao Qing, say that the 6th young master sent someone to send a gift. She was overjoyed and ran over to take a look. Mother, the East Marshal sent something to our residence? As soon as she entered the hall, Hu Yan's beautiful voice, which was like an oriole's, sounded before she could stand firm. Yan, slow down. Don't fall again. You're almost a big girl. Why are you still so careless? Seeing that it was her daughter who came, Hu Wangshi couldn't help but say coquettishly, Mother, where are the things that the East Marshal sent us? Hu Yan didn't listen to her mother's nagging, but asked anxiously. That's it. Knowing that if she didn't answer, her daughter would continue to ask, Hu Wangshi simply pointed to the 2 bags of things on the ground that were about to be put into the warehouse. Ah! Hu Yan first exclaimed, then walked in front of the 2 bags and casually picked one up to take a closer look. However, it seemed that this wasn't enough. She directly opened the other bag, pulled it out, and rubbed it in her hands. Seeing Hu Yan's actions, Hu Wangshi's face turned red and said, Yan, what are you doing? This is… But what? What is this thing? It feels so weak? Is it used to write big words? It doesn't seem right. Even though Hu Yan thought that she was smart, when she saw the toilet paper for the first time, she still couldn't see its use. Yan, come here. Hu Wangshi, who had always been educated to be well-mannered, felt that some words were too shameful to say. She pulled her daughter in front of her and then whispered something in her ear. Ah! Hu Yan's face changed. First, she blushed, then she spat softly and said in a voice that only she could hear, How shameless of you to give me such things. Yan, what did you say? Hu Wangshi obviously didn't hear clearly. Nothing. Hu Yan panicked and said, I just said that this thing looks soft and seems to be suitable for that. How about this, I'll take it away first. If it's useful, I'll send it back to you. After saying that, without waiting for Hu Wangshi's agreement, she and little Qing each carried a bag of toilet paper, turned around, and ran out. Hey, slow down, slow down. Hu Wangshi didn't care about the 2 bags of toilet paper. She didn't know its use at all. She was just worried that her daughter would run too fast and fall down. This was like a small episode in her life. Hu Wangshi didn't care at all. Not only that, many officials who received the toilet paper didn't care too much. It wasn't until the next day when they went to the imperial court that they realized how precious the toilet paper was. In the side hall of the Yang Manor, Madame Shui learned 2 new songs, Exploring Qingshui River and Wishing We Last Forever. She was very happy. After singing it a few times and receiving Yang Chendong's affirmation, she was overjoyed. Thank you for teaching me, Dong Shui. But I don't know if these 2 new songs can be sung in Baihua Hall, Madame Shui said carefully when she was talking. She was afraid that Yang Chendong wouldn't agree. No problem. You can sing them if you want. Yang Chendong smiled. It always took a process for a new song to be accepted by the world. Baihua Hall could expand its influence. Why not? As for the copyright of the new songs, Yang Chendong didn't care at all. He didn't know how many songs like this there were. If it weren't for the fact that the lyrics and music of these two songs were clean and suitable for zither and pipa, he could teach more. Seeing that Yang Chendong agreed, Madame Shui was overjoyed. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.